Neron Skies. Written by Keary Taylor. Narrated by Jamie Lamchick. 1. The vendor looks at me with a suspicious side eye. His gaze shifts back to the group behind me. They stand there, looking windblown and sun-dried. Our skin is caked with dirt and sand. Our lips are cracked and peeling. We're a mess. "We're not from around here," I state, looking the ugly man straight in the eye, "which is obviously why we need these." He looks at me again, but grunts the total. I extend my wrist, paying the credits. "Thank you," I say through clenched teeth as I take the clothing from the counter, giving him an annoyed look. I turn, distributing the items to everyone in our runaway group. Zayn, Reena, my father and I slip the hooded robes over our heads and step back out into the street. Apparently, Stipe is nice on the other side of the planet, but the Frank our ship came with didn't take the landscape into consideration when he landed us on this planet. He detected commerce and civilization and touched down on the side closest to our descent. This side of the planet is non-stop wind, high temperatures, and lots of sand. We landed a kilometer outside of the town not to draw too much attention. The Corsair is beautiful. A ship like it draws questions. We left the Frank to guard it. So we had to make the walk through the wind and pounding sand to reach the town and this rudimentary market. I slip the hood over my head, grateful for it. It's thin fabric, but it's stiff, so it holds its form and has a sheer net that cascades down in front of my face so I can see. It drapes down past my neck, covering much of my chest. Guarded against the elements now, we head down the street. I'm trying not to have an anxiety attack. I feel so exposed. My entire life, all I've ever known are towering skyscrapers. I've never been able to see farther than 20 feet until the next towering building. But here, it's rolling hills of sand and wide, tan skies for as far as I can see. It's overwhelming and incredible at the same time. "I vote we get some food first," Zayn pipes up. "After 9 days of rationed Korpillion food, I think I'm ready to see the offerings of the southern desert pole of Stipe." I nod in agreement. No one complains as we follow our noses down the lane and find a shop advertising the best food in town. We push open the tent flaps and step inside. The floor is sand, drug inside from the street. The dust is thick in the air, but it smells like spices and some kind of protein, and it makes my mouth water. We order whatever the cook wants to bring us and tuck ourselves into a table at the far back of the tent. "Think anywhere on this planet has a shower?" Zayn asks, running his hands through his sandy hair. I understand what he means. Our ship has a good supply of water, but it also has the latest technology in recycling every drop, from the moisture in our breath to the runoff from the showers to the urine our bodies produce. It's hard to feel clean, knowing where the water came from, even if it has been filtered and cleaned. "You've just been showered for nearly an hour with sand," I say, looking toward the kitchen as my stomach growls. I think we're entirely new desert creatures now. Who needs water? He and my father chuckle, but Reena doesn't even crack a smile. She might be on the run with us, but she still doesn't like me. The food is brought to our table, and my stomach gives a ravenous growl. It smells real. It smells organic. It smells fresh. I shove the first bite into my mouth and nearly moan at the explosion of flavor. It's some kind of meat, real, from an animal, I'd guess. It's doused in spices. There's some sort of root vegetable, and I just know it was grown in the ground. There's another vegetable, something juicy and a little sweet and savory.
Is this what real food tastes like?
Zayn demands in surprise. His eyes are wide, and he keeps his mouth open just slightly because the food is piping hot and burning my mouth too.
What the void have we been eating on Korpillion?
Processed, engineered, soot-tainted garbage. Reena says the words without thinking, as she too lays into the meal on her plate. My father doesn't even say anything. He lets his eyes slide closed as he slowly chews, obviously enjoying every single bite.
We're supplying from here,
Zayn says, pointing at the kitchen.
None of that pre-packed stuff. We're having them space freeze a whole solar's worth of meals to get us all the way to the G sector.
I laugh, shaking my head at his enthusiasm, because it's obviously not going to happen, but I feel the same way. Stipe might be a desert wasteland outside this tent. Who knew there would be such amazing food inside? What other kinds of food might we discover on other planets if the food here tastes this good to a few refugees from Korpillion? I think we should stay on planet for the night, I say, swallowing another steaming hot bite. We need to take our time and make sure we get all the supplies we need so we don't have to stop for a while. I'm sure we can find a place to stay in town. If not, we'll go back and sleep on the ship.
Ugh, slam the G sector,
Zayn says around a huge mouthful of food.
I vote we just spend the rest of our lives eating food from every Dominion-free planet in the galaxy.
Typical man, Reena says as she pops another bite into her mouth. So easily ruled by his stomach.
Does your mouth not feel alive for the very first time ever?
He counters, looking at her with wide eyes. It actually happens. Reena cracks a small smile. But she doesn't say anything, just looks back at her food and takes another bite. I talk to the cook. I ask him how many meals he can get space frozen for us by tomorrow morning. He says he can pre-cook 4 weeks' worth of meals for the 4 of us, but only if I prepay for them now. It's a risk, but things aren't nearly as expensive on Stipe as they were on Korpillion, and I have over 3 million credits in my account now. I agree and pay the man.
You still don't know who gave you the ship or the credits?
My father asks as we walk down the street when we're done eating and dealing. My stomach twists in a knot. No, I lie. I hate lying, but how could he ever understand the complexity of the situation between Valen and I when I don't really even understand it myself? How could I ever tell him the only Nero in the galaxy helped me, when he just helped kill so many people on Korpillion?
I don't understand,
Torrin says, shaking his head.
Who has that kind of money? And why you?
I don't know, Dad, I say, looking for a shop to go into, just as a distraction, for a change of subject. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe it was meant to go to someone else and I just got lucky. I glance over at my dad, and I'm relieved that his eyes lighten a bit. There's a look of dawning in his eyes, like that explanation makes total sense.
Of course,
he says, nodding his head.
It is a terrible thing that the intended recipient didn't escape when they were supposed to, but I cannot say that I'm ungrateful.
My stomach twists a little more. That money and that ship made it to its exact intended recipient. I escaped just as soon as I possibly could. Me too, I say, offering my dad a little thin-lipped smile. But I have to look away, because I hate lying to my dad, even though I've done so much of it in the past 6 lunars. In the heart of town, there is an inn. They only have 3 rooms left, and Dad took a key before he found that out, and Reena gave me one dark look, daring me to make her share with anyone, and took off with her key, which left me and Zayn sharing. Great. Together, we climb the narrow steps up to the 2nd floor.
We pass by 4 other rooms before coming to the one that matches the number on our key. I unlock the door, and without saying anything, we step inside. I put my packages on the desk just inside the room, filling the whole tabletop. I picked up some clothes, some artisan soaps and skin salves, and some genuine leather boots. "You can take the bed," Zayn says as he closes the door behind us. I turn, seeing that there is only one bed. It's larger than my bunk on the ship or the one I had back on Korpillion. It would fit 2 people, but only people who want to snuggle. I'm about to argue, to say that's stupid. We can sleep next to each other like 2 regular people, but he slips into the washroom before I can say anything. It's his lucky day. I hear water running and then the sound of it hitting a body. I sink onto the bed, exhausted. I kick my boots off, letting them scatter more sand across the already sandy floor. Flopping back, I let my arm rest across my eyes. I doubt I'll get much sleep tonight. If Zayn is pressed so close up against me, I'm going to smell his skin. I'm going to feel it. I'm going to remember. I'm going to remember how sweet and flirtatious he was when he got transferred to my quadrant. I'm going to remember how he surprised me with a vat of mechanical grease one day. Not romantic in the least, but thoughtful, considering my job. I'm going to remember how he nervously asked me to go out with him to the musical screening over the weekend. I'm going to remember our first kiss in the dark at the screening. I'm going to remember the feeling of his hand on my lower back, on my neck, his fingers in my hair, his lips on mine, his tongue in my mouth. I'm going to remember how his body felt against mine. Lying here in the dying light, I contemplate. I changed my life and began making Neron weapons because I was bored. I became reckless and stepped into illegal circles because I couldn't stand the thought of my life forever staying the same, day after day. But it's all changed now. I'm not even on the same planet anymore. I'm never going back. Zayn and I ended because of all that stuff before. Do our new circumstances change anything? I hear the door open, and I pretend I'm already asleep. But through the dim, nearly dark light, I stare at Zayn, watching as he digs through his own packages to grab some clothes. I may still be attracted to Zayn. His face hasn't changed. His body is still the same one that drew me in nearly 2 solars ago. But I study the serious expression on his face. I can see the weight on his shoulders. And I know. We're different people now. He may think he's still in love with me, that maybe someday we will find our way back into each other's arms. But I am not the same girl I was a solar ago. I am no longer the woman he thinks I am. We can't go back. I let my eyes slide closed again, keeping my breathing deep and even. But through the dark of the weight of my arm against my eyes, I make out other dark shapes. Dark pants, boots and buckles, a black hood, and a dark mask. Black hair. But vivid blue eyes. I'm not the same person I was a solar ago. I don't even know who or what I am anymore. But there is one person in the galaxy who does. And because I let myself trust him, I don't know if I can ever trust myself again. Two. Fully supplied and stocked, we take back to the skies, speeding past the moons of Stipe, and then their sun is long behind us. We have enough supplies on board to last us a lunar. We will make it clear to the Q sector before we need to stop again. The Frank puts in the coordinates and autopilots the ship. A week into the journey, I find myself on the command deck, looking out at the stars. A meteor shower is going on just out from us, and I watch with fascination. Occasionally, I'd be able to see stars from Korpillion, but not often. The lights on the planet are so bright, the sky above just looks like a dark blue haze. But out here, there is an endless supply of stars and moons. The door to the living quarters opens, and out steps Reena. When she sees the observation deck is already occupied, she hesitates. She was looking for solitude, but must not care enough to turn back. She takes a seat behind the inactive Frank. "It's so quiet out here," she says, propping her feet up on the seat across from her. "I still can't get used to it. I haven't slept well since we left Korpillion." "The mines were awfully loud," I say with a little nod. "Not just the mines, though, the entire planet," she says, looking out the viewport. "So much motion, so many people. They all create noise. But out here, it's so still," I say. And I feel it. We may be rocketing through space, but everything around us is still. Peaceful. Quiet. Reena nods. We're quiet for a while, just looking out at the endless space. "Did you know?" she asks, after a few long minutes. "Know what?" I ask without looking at her. "That you're a Nero." Her words rip my eyes from their gaze out the window, back to her. She said the words so simply, so calmly, like they don't mean anything life-changing. "I'm not a Nero," I say, dragging my eyes back to the window, forcing myself not to look at her. "I saw you, Nova," she says. "I saw you keep those rocks from falling on you. They would have killed you. But you raised your hands, and all the Neron in the air gathered around you and prevented those rocks from crushing you." I refuse to say anything, to look at her. It doesn't feel real now. It feels like a dream I had. "You wouldn't be able to do what you did unless you were like him." Him. The last Nero. Valen Nero. "I'm nothing like him." I say the words in a quiet hiss. My chest aches. My heart hurts. I feel. I shove whatever is inside me down, deep down. "Why did he help you escape?" Reena asks. She keeps pushing, but in that quiet, calm, collected, elegant way of hers. She doesn't like me, but she hasn't exposed me to my father or Zayn yet. But she wants to press until I squirm. "I don't know what you're talking about," I say, still refusing to look at her. She's quiet for a moment. I'm aware of the gears turning in her head, putting things together, making assumptions, trying to figure this puzzle out. "Lies will only leave you feeling alone," she says. She rises to her feet, preparing to leave. But she hesitates, and I feel her eyes on me. "Lying to yourself, worst of all. No one and nothing in this galaxy is black and white, Nova. Don't punish yourself with that belief." I press the back of my knuckles to my lips, trying to pretend like I didn't hear her. I keep staring at the stars as she walks back to the door, leaving me alone. Emotions pool in my eyes as her words keep echoing back to me, over and over again. Alone. Alone. I feel so alone. In my mind, I search for that door, and it's there. I don't think either of us could destroy it, even if we tried. But it's shut right now. Black and white. Reena is right. I want to push that door open, and I don't, with every fiber of my being. I haven't spoken to Valen since he told me about the Bahiri. He hasn't tried to contact me since then, and I haven't reached out either. I feel it in my brain, this hesitance. Neither of us knows what to say. I still don't. Sitting alone in the command deck, I look around. I'm still alone. Alone as ever. I bring my hand up in front of me, my palm up, my fingers lightly gathered together. I let my senses reach out. It's like letting out a breath that travels to every nook and cranny on this ship. I search. I touch space around me. My eyes slide closed for a moment because I feel it. The energy that exists in the air. I feel the life in everything. I feel the existence of a million solars of being. I feel an electric spark. Come to me, I think. Air breathes out over my lips, but the words don't actually form. When I open my eyes, it's there. The energy, the light. A small electrical storm of Neron floats around my hand. It's wild and untamed. It bucks and threatens to dissipate. But I hold it there, staring at the miracle of what I've just done. I've called Neron. I'm holding it here with my will. The moisture in my eyes breaks, and a single tear slips down my face. I suck in a quivering breath, and the Neron dissipates. I'm not a Nero. I am no one. I am nothing. Three. The ceiling is so close. I raise my arm up and place my palm flat against it. The surface is cool, but not cold. It's amazing that just on the other side of all this metal and insulation is the vastness of space. I'd die if I could somehow just melt through the frame of the ship. I'd be a frozen corpse in a matter of seconds. I'm the first to head to bed. We've just finished eating our meal together, one of the space frozen meals from Stipe. Zayn managed to talk Reena into playing a hollow game with him that he bought on the planet. My father played too. I'm not myself. Ever since we left Korpillion, I feel this weight on me. I feel like I'm on this self-destructive path. There's a war going on inside of me. More than one, actually. There's hate, and confusion, and joy, and denial. I know I've pulled away from everyone. I know Dad and Zayn know I'm different. Maybe they just assume it's the weight of seeing all those miners die on Korpillion. But that's only a small fraction of it. The door to the bunk room opens, and I've lived with the man my entire life, so I know the sounds of my dad's feet. He makes his way across the small space and climbs up to his bunk, the top one across from mine. I tilt my head to the side so I can look at him. He looks at me with those gray eyes of his. He props his head up in his hand, his elbow dug into the pad of his bed. There's a serious look on his face, but he always looks serious. Serious and tired. "Are you all right?" he asks. My father's voice is comforting. It's deep and rattling. His voice sounds rugged, but calming. I can't find an answer immediately. I bite the inside of my cheek and give a shrug. "I may not be the most nurturing or hands-on father," he says. His eyes bore into me, like he's trying to read my soul. "But I've noticed how unhappy you became, starting about a solar ago. And then you seemed a little different just before you and Zayn split up." I can tell where this is going, and surprisingly, I'm okay with it. I need to confess, to tell him what has happened. "Is that when you started getting involved with the weapons?" he asks. I roll onto my side, mirroring his position. I nod. "It was about a lunar before we broke up," I say. My eyes fall to the blanket beneath me. I draw little patterns into it, and I realize they look like Neron arcs. when you broke your arm. We needed the money, and I'd just been experimenting. I expect him to protest, to tell me I shouldn't have risked so much to help him, but he stays silent, and I'm grateful for that. And for the first time, I felt awake, I say. My eyes rise up to meet his. He stares at me with this open expression. My father is a quiet man. He observes. He absorbs. I felt like I'd broken out of this rut I'd been in my whole life, and I was good at it. I loved building the things I made. And people were willing to buy them, Torin says. I nod. I was saving up, I say. People were willing to pay a lot of money, and I didn't ask questions, so I didn't have to feel guilty about whatever they were going to use them for. Maybe that makes me a bad person, but it's the way it was. What were you saving up for? My father asks, ignoring the serious statement I just made, the one I've been thinking about non-stop since my conversation with Valen, before I even knew his name. I shrug. The new life? I don't know. But then Reena told me Dominion was going to be coming through in 4 solars, and then I was saving up to get us off Korpillion. I quit my job a few weeks before we left the planet. I was working on Neron weapons full time. My father swallows once, and I see his jaw harden. Now he knows. He knows just how much I've been hiding from him. You've taken care of me my whole life, Dad, I say. I fix my eyes on him, trying to show him that I have no regrets. I'm an adult. I will take care of you, too. It doesn't take much. My father's eyes redden. He bites the inside of his lower lip. He looks away from me and doesn't say anything for a long moment. He fixes his gaze on the ceiling, and I can sense the swarm of thoughts going through his head. You were always such a curious child, Nova, he says, still not looking at me. You wanted to know how everything worked, and I knew, even back then, that the life I gave you would never be enough to satisfy you. Dad, I say with a sigh, guilt rolling into my stomach. You were always destined to live a life of more, Nova, he says, cutting me off. He looks back at me now, his eyes glistening. I hate that everything played out the way it has, but you were always meant for the stars. I hope you find yourself out here. He looks at me for a moment longer, and I really just don't have any words. So he rolls out of his bunk. He takes a step forward and stretches up onto his toes. He presses a kiss to my forehead. I love you always, he says. No matter what. I complete the promise we've said to each other 1,000 times. He offers me a little smile and ducks back out of the bunk room, dimming the light for me. I roll toward the wall, turning my back to the room. I pull a pillow over my head. I hope you find yourself out here. Dads are supposed to be smart and have wisdom. Mine has a lot of it. But I feel just the opposite out here. I feel like I've lost myself. I feel like I don't know who I am. I feel like I no longer know what I'm made of. And I hate that. I'm a liar. I know that much about myself. I'm really good at it. Because even though I'm hiding out by myself here in the mechanical room, touching the Neron core of the ship, making it swirl and bend and move to my will,
I'm still telling myself I'm not a Nero.
And I'm still not telling my father or Zayn about what happened on Korpillion. Not about my keeping those rocks from crushing me. Not about my run-in with the Nero. Not about my connection with Valen and the lunars we've been talking. Yes, I am a liar. At least that much I still know about myself. We've got an asteroid belt coming up. I nearly jump out of my skin at Zayn's voice behind me. I jerk my hands back from the Neron core, and it instantly settles back into its soft floating state. I whip around, trying not to look guilty, but Zayn is looking at his holotab, tracking what's coming up in front of us.
"You need to strap in,"
he says, and I'm thankful that it's only now that he looks up at me.
"It's gonna get bumpy."
"'Kay," I say, and if he was paying attention, he'd hear how my voice is just a little too high-pitched. Looking guilty as void, I follow Zayn out onto the command deck. He heads straight for the co-pilot seat, buckling in. Dad and Reena are already strapped into the second row, so I take a seat by myself in the third. "Prepare for quick rotations, drops, and unexpected changes of direction," the Frank states. His fingers are plugged into the controls. There's a holographic monitor displayed in front of his face, but I know it's for our benefit. Ahead, there are dozens of blinking red objects. Asteroids are scattered all in front of us, blocking our clear path to our destination.
"I sure hope you have some evasive flying skills, bot,"
Zayn says. He sits forward, his hands hovering over the co-pilot controls. I haven't felt our speed until now. We're constantly shooting through the galaxy, but now, at the first drop to avoid an asteroid, I feel it. Like an arrow being shot, except our direction changes and we drop and then roll. A yell escapes Dad's throat, and Reena says something about being sick. I hold my own stomach as we suddenly shoot to the left and then immediately rise straight up. "How fast are those asteroids moving?" I yell, because there are all kinds of warning alarms sounding on the deck.
"Half the speed we are,"
Zayn says, frantically tapping at his holotab.
"But they aren't staying on an exact course. I think our slipstream is affecting them. They seem to be pulled to us."
"Great," I mumble. "We're moving targets for space rocks as big as our ship." And as we dip, I get a glance at one of the asteroids, and it has to be twice the size of our ship. The Frank spins and dives, piloting the ship, avoiding the asteroids. Until just ahead, I see it, and Zayn sees it at the same time, too. 2 asteroids collide, and they break into a dozen pieces.
"Slag!"
The word rips from Zayn's lips. His arms dart out, and his hands grip the controllers, ripping control from the Frank, who is only relying on data that hasn't updated yet. We immediately spiral down, spinning and spinning, so fast my vision blacks out for a second. And then I hear the thud, the crunch.
"We hit something!"
Dad yells as he grabs onto anything to balance himself as we keep falling and then roll to the side.
"No slag!"
Zayn screams. His eyes are wide and frantic and wild with excitement and terror. I can hear it, just barely. A tiny whoosh of air, a sucking sound. "Are we losing air pressure?" Reena asks. She still sounds calm, but I detect a hysterical edge to it.
"A little busy up here,"
Zayn yells, and we suddenly barrel roll to the right. My eyes squeeze closed, trying to keep myself from throwing up, but all I can think about is where we collided with the asteroid and the sound of air escaping our ship. My senses reach out all on their own. I feel the walls of the ship. I feel the mechanics of it. I feel the absence of air outside. And there, toward the back end of the ship, I feel it. The puncture. The opening is small. It would take an hour for us to lose all our oxygen through it. But it's there. My heart thumps fast, and my entire body feels hot. How could I ever get outside into space to fix it? I haven't seen any oxygen suits on this ship. I haven't seen any tether lines. But there, in the back of my brain, I feel a tug. Neron is in everything. In my blood, in the oxygen, in every bit of metal we build our ships out of. I tell my insides to calm. I take a slow breath. I can see the hole, even though I'm not outside, and I'm not next to where it was hit. But I can see it there. I can feel the Neron in the metal. My hand moves at my side just slightly. I feel the Neron. I tell it to move with the metal. I tell it to reform, to knit back together. And I see it. The blue glowing beneath the surface of the metal. I see the metal taking its shape again. I see it healing. And then a scar, solid and firm, in the side of our ship.
And the blue glow slowly dies as I release the Neron.
Just as I open my eyes, the insanity ride through the asteroid belt dies. My insides jar as we level out and fly straight once more. Reena is staring at me, and I know she knows what I just did. She heard the air leaking, and now she doesn't.
Whoa!
Zayn lets a shout out, raising his hands into the air, letting the Frank take over once more.
Made it through to the other side.
Never, Dad says, leaning over, keeping his head between his knees.
Never again.
Zayn lets out a joyful laugh, looking back at us all.
And air pressure's normal. I didn't even run into anything.
I force a smile. Well done, I say. But really, I'm thinking about that hole I patched, outside, in space, while I'm sitting here inside. If I wasn't, if I'm not what Valen says I am, we'd all be dead. In an hour, we'd be dead from lack of oxygen. We'd all be dead. An emotional wave of gratitude crashes through my chest, washing my stomach with a cold wave. I bite my lower lip, ignoring Zayn and my father reliving every moment of our defensive antics through space. We're alive. I fixed the ship. All my life, the term Nero has had such a negative connotation because of how Dominion used theirs. But I just saved my family. I did something good. The thought washes through me, and I feel this sense of peace. Good. There is good. The galaxy is a complicated place, and I know Reena is right. There is no black and white. Maybe I'll feel different again in an hour. Maybe I'll feel lost again tomorrow. But I feel like I just made a discovery. And there's only one person I can talk to about it. But would he ever actually hear me? 4. I stay up late that night. I hang out in the kitchen, stalling by doing the dishes, and finally Reena announces she's heading to bed. Next is my father. But I get the entire kitchen cleaned as Zayn just lingers, trying to instigate a conversation. I think I respond, and hopefully I didn't sound like an idiot, but my brain is leagues away. Eventually, he seems to get the message that I'm not in the mood to talk to him, and he finally says he's going to bed. I stall longer. I go to the command deck and pretend to read a book, but really, I'm rehearsing the conversation in my mind. I wait an entire hour after Zayn goes to bed before I dare do anything. Through the silent ship, I slip back to the mechanical room. I close the door behind me. The Neron core glows. Just seeing it, I feel lighter. I feel better. Hopeful, even. I tuck myself back between two pieces of equipment, well out of view of the door. I lean my back against the metal wall and tuck my knees into my chest. I lay my staff on the floor next to me and spin it in a circle with the tip of my finger. I've had it on me every moment I'm dressed since I left Korpillion. I know I'm safe here on the ship. There's no one who's going to hurt me here. But I haven't been able to bring myself to lay it down and leave it. I let my eyes slide closed, and I reach out. I feel. I take a walk through my mind, looking for that door. It isn't hard to find. I go straight to it. Tentatively, I reach a hand out. I hesitate for a moment. It's been weeks. Our conversation was strained last time we spoke. But these weeks of silence have been agony. I miss him. I miss Valen. I miss my friend. I push on that door. Are you there? I call out mentally. Though alone in our ship, I'm still sitting perfectly still on the floor, my eyes closed. I sense a rustle, a peak of attention. Footsteps. I wait a solid minute. 2. I can feel him moving, as if walking down corridors, around corners, and then finally, a door closing. Nova. His voice echoes through my brain, clear as day. Hearing his voice, my throat tightens, and even though I'm not actually speaking the words out loud, it's difficult to communicate for a moment. I squeeze my eyes closed, because I remember that vision of him, of me. I remember how I felt looking into his eyes. Are you all right? He asks when I don't say anything. I'm fine, I manage. I actually nod even though he can't see it. I take in a deep breath, pressing my knuckles into my mouth. I don't want to hear your voice this much. There's a long moment, and I can feel that familiar depth, that complexity that is Valen Nero. I've missed you, Nova, he says, and every bit of it sounds like a confession. His words come through soft and quiet, and they pull emotions from my chest, my eyes, my brain. My eyes are already closed, but I squeeze them tighter. I shake my head. Everything is too complicated, I say, confessing the words as they spill from my heart to my brain, out my lips. I don't know who I am. I don't know who you are. I don't know what to think or feel or do. I feel his presence, solid, and I swear it's real, and I crave it. I need more. I raise my hand to the side of my neck, remembering how it felt to have his hand there, both in the vision and in real life. I need you, Valen. The words come out, absolutely true and utterly terrifying. I feel him hesitant and surprised, but there's this hint of hope tied to him, and I haven't felt that from him yet. I need to see you, I whisper. It's an impossible request. It's a selfish one. They're words I never should have confessed out loud because Valen is dangerous. He didn't want to know where I was going. Him knowing puts everyone on this ship in danger. And I'm telling a dangerous murderer that I want to see him, that I need him. But I don't regret the words. Where are you? I'm surprised when he says the words, and there's a hint of urgency and excitement to his voice. I shake my head. Valen, I might want to see you, but it's impossible. You're with Cyrillius. I can't risk you attracting him here. I'm done on Korpillion, he says. His words are quick, excited. Cyrillius will be here for at least another lunar. I was preparing to leave anyway. He won't question me leaving. I have my own personal transport ship. Every person in the galaxy knows the Black Arrow, I say, shaking my head. You'll be followed or tracked. He hesitates for a moment, and he knows I'm right. I can take one of the Class 5 ships on the Dominion. They're in and out of here all day, every day. No one will know it's me. The thought makes my heart jump 3 inches higher in my chest. My heartbeat increases. You're sure you won't be followed? I ask, scared and hesitant. I sense movement again.
Is he already headed to his ship? Is he really so anxious? Yes, he responds. Where are you, Nova? A little smile forms on my lips, and I press them together, biting them into place out of guilt. In the S sector. We'll be crossing into the R sector in just 2 days. He hesitates for a moment, and I can feel him doing mental calculations, planning. I can be there in 6 days if I get the right ship. 6 days. I don't know what I expected. Really, I expected nothing because it doesn't make any sense what he's doing, what I asked. But 6 days feels like an eternity, even though that's incredible, considering it's taken us over a lunar to get here. Get the right ship, then, I say. I'm smiling. I shouldn't be smiling. I've just done a terrible thing. But I can't bring myself to feel bad. There's a moment of hesitation. I feel him. Somehow I can almost see him, standing in the huge hull of the Dominion, considering different ships. I can imagine them, all in a line inside the huge Class 1 ship, considering which will be the most discreet and the fastest. I will be there, Nova, he says, just as fast as I can. And we can talk. Really talk. I bite my lower lip and feel myself nodding. All right. Fly safe. And I swear I can feel it. Valen smiling. But I don't linger or dwell on that too long. I've done and asked too much. I close the connection and open my eyes. I sit, smiling like a horrible, guilty fool, alone in the mechanical room. Five. Are you trying to be a raging Kakshi the last few days, or is it just a really bad cycle? Oh, I snap. I turn, throwing a fist. Only Zayn is pretty quick, so at the last second he moves, and I only barely clip his jaw. But the way I hit, I break a blood vessel in my hand. Slag! I yell, cradling my hand into my chest and turning away from Zayn. I walk away, heading from the command deck back toward the kitchen. You seriously just hit me, Zayn protests. He follows me, his hand on his jaw, but I can tell I'm the only one who's in pain. What the void is going on, Nova? Why are you so anxious and pissed off lately? I dig into the freezer, hoping for some ice. There, toward the bottom, I find a bucket with a few cubes. I fish one out and press it to the back of my knuckles. They're already a blooming black and purple bruise. Nothing, I hiss. You're just getting on every last one of my nerves, okay? It's tight quarters, there's barely any room to breathe, I just need some space. He looks at me with narrowed eyes. Guess space is getting to your head. You're 2 seconds from blowing up on everyone, no matter if we breathe a word or just breathe in general. I glare at him, but I know he's right. I've been nervous and anxious and impatient. Every minute of the day I'm counting down. Every day feels like 6. I swear time has come to a standstill. I'm losing my mind waiting for Valen to get here. I'm not trying to be a cack, I say, letting my eyes fall to the floor. I'm sorry, space is just making me crazy, I guess. Zayn sighs, leaning back against the counter, crossing his boots at the ankles. I think we're all a little stir-crazy, he says. Maybe we should take a break. Head to a planet a little early? I shake my head. Every stop we make is that much longer until we reach the G sector. He shrugs. What's the hurry? Maybe we'll take a break somewhere and find a planet we want to stay on for a while. Or forever? My eyes snap to his and I glare. We're getting as far from Dominion as we can, remember? I don't want to be anywhere near them, do you? It's Zayn's turn to glare. He looks at me with dark, annoyed eyes, and I realize I'm doing it again. I'm snapping too quick and easy. Sorry, I say, looking down. My hand is nearly covered with the spreading bruise. Zayn steps forward, taking my hand in his, examining the injury I gave myself. Did it even hurt a little? I ask, annoyed. He gives a huff of a laugh. Do you want the truth or something that will make you feel better? Don't make me punch you again, I growl. He laughs. Oh, I won't. I got lucky that time is all. I know you know how to throw a punch, Nova. He still holds my hand, and I can feel his words, the flirtation in them, the caring and the teasing. My stomach twists, so I pull my hand back, turning away from him. I stand over the sink, the melt-off of the ice cube dripping down into it. I hear him take a step forward, and my heart jumps into my throat when I feel one of his hands on my left hip. I hear him breathe, and then I feel his lips lightly brush against my right shoulder. We're 400 leagues from Korpillion, Nova, he says softly. I know life is never going to be the same, and I'm ready for whatever is to come. Can you think about how that changes things? I'm not the same person that I was 3 weeks ago, Nova. I stand there, frozen. My eyes stay fixed on the cabinet in front of me, my entire body taut and stiff. We're good together, he says. His hands don't get more demanding. The one just sits there against my hip, in a position it's sat 100 times before. But I feel the heat of his body against the back of me. Warming and close. I know exactly how he would feel if he took just half a step closer and his body pressed to mine. Think about it, he says quietly. And then he steps back, and I hear him walk out of the kitchen. Think about it. I have thought about it. I've considered it. I've imagined. I've wondered. But here I still stand, frozen and stiff, with my heart stuck in my throat, choking me. Zayn isn't the same man he was when he left Korpillion, but it was circumstance that forced him to change. I'm not the same woman I was when he loved me and I loved him. I'm not the same person I was a lunar ago. I'm not even the same person I was yesterday. Every single day, I'm trying to figure out who the void I am. But I know I'm not the woman Zayn thinks he's still in love with. 6. I've been pacing all day, but trying not to seem like I'm pacing. I go from cleaning the command deck, to cleaning the washroom, to cleaning the kitchen 3 times, and then to cleaning and re-cleaning the bunk room. I ran out of spaces to clean halfway through the day. It's day 6, and Valen connected just after I woke up to tell me he'd locked onto my location and would be arriving just a few hours before dinner time. How does this work? I'd asked him. Everyone is going to see your ship. The trackers are going to go ballistic, and I think everyone might freak out if you just walk onto our ship. My heart was pounding in my chest. I hadn't thought this through. This was a mistake. But I couldn't fool myself when he said the next words, and my heart fluttered. I'll take care of it. I shouldn't, but I trust him. Somehow I just knew that he would, so I didn't worry about the details. But the day was going by so slow. Reena and Zayn are playing a card game again on the command deck. I'm trying to work on my staff, even though it's perfectly fine, when Zayn lets out a huge yawn. Am I boring you? Reena says, her tone flat. Sorry, Zayn says, putting his hand over his mouth. I just got really tired. And, like it's contagious, Reena yawns as well. And I don't understand what's happening, but Zayn folds his arms on the table and rests his chin on his forearms. He blinks slow, his eyes heavy and tired. Reena leans back in her chair, her eyelids drooping. She blinks slower and slower. My brows furrow when Zayn lays his head down on his arm. His eyes slide closed. Reena's head dips, bobbing up once, before it dips again, and her head hangs. Soft sounds of sleep come out of both of them just a moment later. My brows furrowed, I stand, walking toward them, but the sounds of my footsteps don't wake either of them. I walk back into the bunk room, and there, I find Dad sleeping in his bed. I take a deep breath, and there's the scent of charged oxygen.
A ship is approaching Nova.
I hear the Frank's digitized voice from the command deck and step back in. Zayn and Reena are still dead asleep at the table. "What size?" I ask.
A Class 5, he relays. We are getting a hailing signal from them, requesting to dock together.
My pulse instantly skyrockets. I hear it in my ears. My palms are sweaty.
Would you like me to approve it? The Frank asks.
I look to the side of the ship, where the docking port is. I can hardly breathe. I'm frozen in place. I can't make my feet move, and I'm pretty sure my heart has stopped pumping blood through my body.
Nova, the Frank prompts. The Class 5 is parallel to us. Would you like me to approve their request for docking?
For a moment, a scene flashes through my head of those 11 miners all lined up, their hands on their heads, on their knees. I see Valen standing there with his mask, gathering Neron from the air. I see him flick his hand, and the Neron spear shoots through every one of their heads, like a pin sliding through butter. But I feel Valen inside me. I feel his pain and his loneliness. I feel his words inside of me. I feel his hesitant desires. I feel him in me, and I feel myself in him. I close my eyes for just a second, and I recall that look on his face in my vision. I remember the absolute clarity in his eyes. In mine. Approve the request, I say, before I can think about it 1 second longer. There's the sound of 3 beeps, and then I hear mechanical whirs and clicks. Our ship suddenly does a little jerk sideways, and I feel the 2 ships magnetize to one another. Air is sucked, and the safety locks pop into place. It's loud in the command deck as the 2 ships dock to one another, but neither Reena nor Zayn stir, and my father doesn't come barging out demanding to know what's going on. And I still smell charged oxygen. It's the smell of Neron, lots of it in the air, and too much oxygen.
Docking complete, the Frank states. Doorways will be pressurized in 10 seconds.
10 seconds? I'm not ready. I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know how I'm going to react when I see him.
5, 4,
the Frank counts down. I step forward. I hook my staff on my belt, in its usual place.
3, 2,
he says. I stand right in front of the port, rolling my shoulders back, holding my chin high.
1,
Frank says. There's a beep, and then slowly, the 2 port doors begin to rise. My heart thunders. My palms are slick. I swear my vision is blurring. But when the doors have risen, there is no one standing there in the other ship. I see an empty side entry. I blink 5 times, telling my body to calm down. I argue with myself for 5 seconds. What are you thinking? How could you do this? But still, I take a step forward. Another. I cross the threshold between our ships. I step inside the Class 5. I turn down the hall, in the direction of the command deck. I make my way down it, and just as I make the turn, I stop short, just 2 feet from running into a dark figure. Valen Nero stops short. We just about collided with each other. The controls behind him beep and state that they have entered autopilot mode, pacing with the Corsair. Nova. My name slips past Valen's lips with surprised reverence. I stop, righting my balance. Valen, I say, with absolute intention. We both stand there on the tips of our toes, unsure what to do, where to go, what to say. I look back, toward the opening between our 2 ships. Can we talk here? I ask, hesitantly looking back at Valen. I just don't feel right. I can't say the rest of the sentence because I feel horrible about saying I don't feel right about inviting him on our ship. I couldn't ever look my crew in the eye again if I had to tell them I let Valen Nero board our ship and that I had asked him there. Of course, he says. Thankfully, he doesn't make me squirm or wallow in my guilt. He steps aside, allowing me access to the command deck. I step forward, letting my eyes take in the entirety of the ship he flew here. It's bigger than ours. The command deck has a full, actual observation deck. Huge glass windows span floor to ceiling. There are 4 large, comfortable-looking chairs spread before it. Behind them is the command center with the controls and screens and everything needed to navigate the skies. There are doors beyond that, going to living quarters, I'm sure. What's wrong with everyone on my ship? I ask, standing in front of the windows and looking out at the dark in front of me. Valen stands behind me, not saying a word, and I swear he's barely breathing. I flooded the ship with Neron, increased the oxygen levels, making them tired, he explains. The oxygen made them sleep. The Neron is making sure they'll have the best sleep of their life. They'll wake up fully charged, you could say. They're breathing in extra amounts of Neron. I know what Neron can do. Any injury, any cut or bruise is going to be totally gone when they wake up. As Valen said, it'll be the best sleep of their life. I nod, grateful he didn't do anything more serious to them. For some reason, I trusted that he wouldn't hurt them. I thought you'd be farther away, Valen says. He takes a few steps forward, but he's still behind me. I can't see him, even in my peripheral vision. I fold my arms around me, holding myself together and tight. It took us a few days to decide where to go. I thought you were going to find the Bahiri, he says, a question and concern in his voice. And I thought you didn't want to know where I was going, I say, as I look over my shoulder at him. The look on his face tells me I've caught him there. None of us really know where the Bahiri are, I say, looking back out the window. We have a guess, so that's what we're going with. He doesn't say anything, but I hear him give a nod. We're quiet for a long moment, each of us lost in our thoughts, not knowing where this should go. We both know he shouldn't be here. There would be consequences for both of us if anyone found out. It wasn't a fluke, I finally say. I tighten my grip around myself, like it's somehow going to hold me together. I hoped it was, but it wasn't. It only takes once, Valen says. His voice is low, rough, but calming. I nod. We had to go through an asteroid belt, I tell him. One of them split apart and it hit our ship. I could hear it, the air leaking out. I fixed the ship. I hear Valen take one step forward.
You saved everyone on board.
I turn back again, looking at him. He wears black pants made of flexible but solid material. He wears a similar long-sleeved tunic that hugs his forearms and shows off the definition in his upper arms. He wears a black vest that buckles across his chest, and a hood that lies against his back at the moment. He doesn't carry any weapons, because he can make one at any given time. Neron is everywhere. I don't know what I'm doing, I say, as my eyes meet his Neron blue ones. I have no idea what this means for my future, how it's going to change my life. But using this to save everyone I care about, it's the only moment I've felt good since I kept that debris from crushing me. I hate that I'm so emotional since I left Korpillion. I wasn't one to cry before then. But out here, in space, with infinite possibilities before us, I'm full of emotions. They try to rise in my eyes, but I swallow once, forcing it all back down. Why do you work for Cyrillius? I ask the question in a hoarse whisper. There's darkness in Valen. I know that without question. It hovers around him at all times. It's always there, inside him. And I see it there, just a little, gathering in his eyes.
I didn't come here for a rebuking, Nova,
he says simply. He steps forward, walking right up to the window. He folds his hands behind his back, looking out at the stars that are so far away. Why did you come? I ask, because I'm still amazed, still confused.
You asked me to,
he states flatly. I shake my head. Bitterness bites at the back of my mouth. Don't you dare brush me off like that. I have been inside your head. You've seen the inside of mine. I take a step forward, toward him, and the desperation in my voice turns his eyes to me. You didn't have to help me, I say, my tone turning gentler. But you did. You saved me. You saved my dad. You saved Zayn and Reena. But you helped me, Valen. You know me, and I think I know a little bit of you. I take another step forward, and we're only 2 feet apart. So please, help me understand. Why do you work for Cyrillius? 7. Valen's eyes slide over to meet mine, though he doesn't turn his head to me. He just looks at me for a long moment. I wonder what he sees. Why he can't look away, just the same as I can't. I wonder if his mind is filled with as much turmoil and confusion as mine.
I was born on the planet Starvis, he says. It's a desert hole with only 200,000 people on it. There's little food. The sun only sets in the winter, but the temperatures don't change with the season. You always feel like you're dying.
He looks back out the window, but I know it's not the black sky of space that he's seeing.
There is no Neron on Starvis, he says. There is little food and little water. There's no economy and no commerce. Starvis is a planet of savages.
I've heard as much. I can't even imagine it, how brutal the planet itself must be. And I've heard the people there are even more ruthless.
There are essentially 4 family tribes on the planet.
He continues to tell me the story of his formation.
One lives on the south side of the planet, where the sun never sets. They've found a way to survive and they keep to themselves. But the other 3 are constantly at war with each other, fighting for the night and the water.
I look back out at space. I try to remember where Starvis is. The L sector, maybe?
We never had an actual home, Valen says. We constantly moved to wherever there was water. We were camped at the base of a mountain. My parents planned to stay for a few nights, to rest. We'd been outrunning one of the other tribes for a week, and we finally lost them.
I let my eyes slide closed, because I think I know where this is going.
It was late, and me and my friends should have turned in for the night, but we were playing some game in the sand. Then we heard the screaming, the sounds of slaughter.
I shake my head just a little.
There were 12 of us children playing off on our own,
Valen says. He says it so evenly, so calmly, like he isn't telling a story about the end of his family.
Every one of our parents were killed by the other tribe. We waited for them to leave, to move on, and then we all had to bury our parents in the sand.
How old were you? I dare ask. I hug myself tight, my heart breaking for that little boy. I can just imagine him digging in the sand with his bare hands, hauling his parents' bodies to it, and then having to cover them up and leave them there.
7,
he says. Emotions spring into my eyes again.
Dominion arrived 2 days later,
He says.
They were rescanning our sector and made it to Starvis. Our planet didn't have a trace of Neron. In fact, the natural Neron on Starvis is the lowest in the entire galaxy.
Incredible. The Nero traditionally come from planets rich in Neron, natural, the kind in the air or the natural resources, but also with solid deposits. The kind you can mine. The kind Dominion likes to steal.
But they found us, a dozen kids with no parents and who would have died within a few days. Cyrillius was there himself. He offered us food. In exchange for working for him, he would feed us for the rest of our lives and give us as much water as we could ever want. And he would get us off that void planet.
Those kids had no idea. To them, Cyrillius was offering heaven.
Dominion's army is massive and the most well-trained in the galaxy,
Valen says. He looks over at me, capturing me with his eyes. And I see just how dark his past is. I see the darkness in them.
Because they start their soldiers young. They make them numb to everything.
Valen, I breathe. I take one step forward and reach out, grabbing his hand. I feel like I'm falling. I fall and fall, deep down, and all around me I feel Valen. I feel the past.
They beat us with every shot we missed.
I hear Valen's voice, even though I don't see him. There's this impression, like shadows dancing in the dark on the edge of my vision. I see a boy knocked to his knees, struck across the face by a much older man.
They beat us every time we were too tired to spar for one more hour,
Valen continues. I see a little boy collapse onto a mat.
They beat us for every minute we slept too long.
I see a figure dragging a little boy out of his bed, lifting him by the front of his tunic, his feet dangling a foot above the ground. I see him tossed across the room and then slapped.
But they fed us, as they promised,
Valen continues, and the vision shifts to a dozen children huddled around a table, eating as quickly as they could.
They gave us as much water as we wanted. They took us far, far away from Starvis.
I see the outline of a familiar shape, the Dominion, floating out among the stars.
For 4 solars, my life was training and beatings and eating as much food as I could. I might have left the planet, but I never felt like I wasn't starving.
I imagine the little boy who lived the first 7 solars of his life, knowing there was not enough food on the planet to sustain the population, even if it was small. I imagine the gift that food must have felt like to such a child.
But when I was 11,
Valen continues his story, and the shadow vision I'm seeing begins to shift.
I was ill. Nothing life-threatening, but enough I needed rest. My commanding officer ripped me out of bed, and when I protested, tried to tell him I was too sick to stand, he beat me. He split my lip, he fractured my eye socket.
I see it. The outline of a man beating a boy. I see him fall to his knees, and the older man raising his fists again for a crushing blow.
I didn't know what happened at first,
Valen says quietly. Suddenly, through the shadowy vision, there is a bright blue light. I see Neron gathering around Valen's small form. I see it swirl and build. And then it explodes, but in a focused, forceful way. The shadow that was Valen's commanding officer splatters all over, pieces flying in every direction.
The man was suddenly scattered across the bunk room,
Valen says, his voice quiet and rough.
And there was this swirling blue energy everywhere, and when I looked down at my hands because they felt warm and good, there was Neron swirling around them.
11. Valen was 11 when he discovered he was a Nero, one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy.
All the other children saw what I did,
Valen says, and my vision of the scene expands, showing me dozens of shadowy heads, all watching in terror, watching the boy who, until then, was one of them.
There were other commanding officers present as well. They all saw me kill my CO.
I watch as, hesitantly, the other COs tell Valen to leave the bunk room. Stunned, horrified, Valen obeyed. They led him through the Dominion, through corridors, through passages. Up they rose until they walked out into a big room with big windows.
They took me to Cyrillius,
Valen says. I see a faceless, shadowy figure turn, and the boy Valen stiffened in terror, bowing his head before the man who owned him.
He told me that I was special, that I was his most valuable soldier, that he would make sure I knew just how unique and powerful I was.
The shadow of Cyrillius steps forward, placing his hands on Valen's shoulders. Even though this is not my story, and I know this is not the real scene, I shiver, wanting to rip Cyrillius's hands off of the boy.
I was his special project after that,
Valen continues.
He did treat me special. He gave me my own quarters. He brought me special trainers. I had all the best food. But I felt it even then, even at 11 solars old, 12, 13. He was using me.
The vision goes black, a wash of black mist rolling through, erasing the story. I open my eyes and see Valen still looking out at space. I wonder if he knew he was showing me, that I could see his story.
I rebelled. I refused to do whatever he told me. I would lock myself in my quarters for weeks on end. I refused to let them control me.
Valen says the words to space, and they're just as empty and hollow.
I told him I'd rather go back to Starvis than keep doing his bidding. I wanted to go home, even if it was to a hellhole.
Once more, my eyes slide closed, and I see the shadow of the Dominion again.
Cyrillius agreed,
Valen says, and I hear his surprise.
When I was 14, he took me back. He refused to release the other children from Starvis, but he took me back to my home planet and dumped me in the middle of the desert.
I see a lone figure standing in the middle of endless sand. He isn't as tall as he is now, but his shoulders are starting to broaden. His chin is held high. His stance is determined. And in the distance, I see the shape of the Dominion retreating.
I nearly starved to death in the first 5 days,
Valen says, and I see a shadow of him endlessly walking through the desert.
I was dehydrated and delirious by the time I spotted the tribe off in the distance. I walked into one of their tents in the middle of the day. I couldn't even think straight to wait until night and be covert. I was lucky they were out. I took every bit of their food and every ounce of their water.
He kneels on the sandy floor, devouring everything as quickly as he can, only it's too fast, and he vomits on the sand after 5 bites. He slows after that, taking small bites and nibbles.
I was just finishing when they returned,
Valen says. I see his figure startle to his feet when the shape of a man and a woman enter the tent. And then they raise a weapon, about to strike him down. But the air grows blue, small swirls circling his hands. He holds them out to defend himself. Only the figures strike him, and the tent explodes with Neron energy.
They tried to kill me for stealing from them, as was the way on Starvis,
he says, just a matter of fact.
I defended myself. I didn't mean to kill them and destroy half the tribe with the Neron.
I see him, standing there with debris flapping in the wind. Dozens of figures stand around him, watching, witnessing. And then they run toward him, rudimentary weapons in their hands. Valen runs.
I ran from them for lunars,
Valen says.
Through the endless deserts I fled. I nearly starved to death every single day. But the tribe was ruthless. I had accidentally killed so many of their family members. I had never had a teacher, had never been taught by another Nero how to control my powers. It had been an accident, but they didn't care. The only justice was for me to pay with my life for theirs.
I see Valen's shadow, running and running. I see him stumble in the sand. I see him collapse. I see him get up again and keep running. Why didn't you defend yourself? I ask. You were just a kid. You should have used your powers to keep yourself safe. I feel Valen shake his head, even though my eyes are still closed.
I didn't want any more of my people's blood on my hands. It was my own tribe that I'd killed.
My emotions surge. My throat tightens. I feel this weight on my shoulders.
And I'd managed to defend myself that once, but Starvis is a planet with very little natural Neron.
He couldn't summon enough to keep himself safe.
My tribe hunted me down, chased me ruthlessly through the desert.
He continues his history.
They caught me once, cut me open, tried to pull the Nero out of me like it was a separate being. I escaped. I passed out for 2 days from dehydration, yet somehow I'd found a cave and they didn't find me.
I see him, curled up on his side, dying in the dark.
For a solar, I thought I would die every day. For a solar, I fought for my survival, and I knew I was going to fail eventually.
I never should have complained about Korpillion. It was overcrowded and it smelled and it was boring. But I was always safe there. I always had water. I always had food.
And one day, as I walked across the desert, realizing that I couldn't keep running forever, the sky darkened.
I see it. The shadow of a great ship casting the desert planet in darkness. I see the shadow of Valen looking up at the sky, and then the shape of a small ship easing out of it.
Cyrillius returned,
Valen says.
I was so relieved to see him. I cried for the first time since his officers beat me. He offered me a deal.
I see 2 figures standing out in the sand, but in my chest, I feel only darkness.
Cyrillius would take me back, take me away from Starvis once more, if I would work for him without complaint. But he promised me things would be better.
The shadow vision zooms out, out, and out, until I see a sphere, glassy and peaceful.
Cyrillius promised me my own planet,
Valen says, and there's reverence in his voice.
I would work for Cyrillius, but he would give me my own planet, where I could go and be safe and be myself. No one would use me there. No one would hunt me. I could be alone and free there.
I have a hard time imagining it, that it would be enough to make Valen go back to Cyrillius, that Valen would want to be that alone, that his own planet was appealing. But maybe after a solar of being hunted, I wouldn't want to see another living being again either.
I realized then that there is no better or good,
Valen says, and the black mist rolls in once more, and I open my eyes.
There is only survival. We all have our ways of holding on to it, and I could survive on a desert planet starving, or I could survive on a massive Class 1 ship and have food and water and a bed.
He looks over at me, and it chills me that his eyes are so hard and so empty.
We're all just a galaxy of survivors, right, Nova?
I shake my head, but the words don't form.
Eight. He turns, startling me. He walks across the command deck and heads for the door that opens beyond it. Not sure what to do with myself, I follow him. He enters the kitchen and digs through a basket of fruit. He selects 2 and hands one to me. The skin of it is purple and slightly bumpy. I squeeze it just a little. It feels soft and juicy underneath. They're from my planet, Valen says. He takes a bite of it, the juice sliding down his chin before he wipes it away. I've never found them anywhere else in the galaxy. Hesitantly, I take a bite. My teeth sink into the soft flesh, and juice explodes into my mouth. It's sweet, tangy, and probably one of the best things I've ever tasted in my life. Oh, wow. The words slip past my lips as I wipe a thumb at the juice rolling down my chin. This is incredible. My heart stops. For real, I freeze. My blood stops pumping through my body. I actually feel cold. Because Valen smiles. I come from a planet with 28.1 billion people. I've seen a lot of faces and a lot of smiles. But never, ever, one as beautiful as Valen's. His teeth are nearly perfectly straight and snow white. It's wide, and I swear I can almost see all of his teeth. He gets these little creases around his mouth. But his whole countenance, it changes. Even the air feels lighter. I swear, the whole galaxy shifted just a little brighter with Valen's smile. Are you all right? He suddenly asks, and that smile disappears, replaced with a look of concern. I nod. And for the first time in 6 days, I find myself smiling too. It grows, and I blink once, willing that worried look on his face away. I smile. I take another bite of the amazing fruit. And finally, a small bit of that smile creeps back onto his face. We stand there for several long moments, just looking at each other. And I add another marvel to the list that is becoming my life. I had Valen in my head for lunars. I spoke to him multiple times a week. I gained a confidant, a friend. And here he is. I see him. I could touch him. How is it possible? I finally ask, my voice quiet and reflective. I don't even understand how it works, this link we have. What does Neron or being a Nero have to do with it? Valen takes the last bite of the fruit and deposits the core into the recycler. He nods his head toward the hallway that leads further into the ship. I toss the rest of my core into the recycler and follow him. There are multiple doors that split off the hallway. A washroom, a bunk room, what I'm sure is the mechanical room. But at the end of the hall, there is a room labeled Captain's Quarters. Valen pushes the door open, and I hesitate for a few moments on the threshold. It's a bedroom, medium in size. There's a bed just big enough for two on the wall to the left. There's a dresser and a desk on the wall to the right. Straight ahead, there's a massive window that spans the back of most of the ship. And before it, there are 2 chairs. Valen crosses the room, not as much of a prude as I feel like right now. I internally scold myself for feeling so scandalized. It's not like I've never been in a bedroom with a man before. But being here with Valen, it feels so intimate, even if this isn't his ship. I step through the doorway and cross to the window.
People have asked me questions over the past decade,
Valen says. He stands next to one of the chairs, but he doesn't sit down. He looks out to space. He's always looking out to space.
The mythology of the Nero has fascinated people over the centuries, and since it's been so long since any of them have been discovered, they ask me questions about how it works, about the deeper details that have been rumored about.
I look over at him, and he looks up at me at the same time.
Everything I know about the Nero and Neron, I have learned by trial and error, he admits. It isn't like I've ever had a teacher or a mentor who could show me how to do things or tell me about things I haven't discovered yet.
He looks at me with those blue eyes, and I know I'm in trouble.
I don't understand how our link works, Nova,
he confesses.
I don't understand it either. It doesn't make any sense to me. Why we can talk to each other when we're sectors away from each other. I don't know why I can get these impressions about where you are or what you're doing or how you're feeling.
He looks down at his hand, hanging relaxed at his side, only 2 feet away from my own hand. It lifts just slightly.
But I wouldn't trade it for anything,
he says.
Not even if Cyrillius offered me an entire solar system of perfect planets. Of all the people I could have randomly woken up with in my head, I'm so thankful it was you, Nova.
I'm frozen, rooted in place, my lips hanging open just a bit. I don't know what to say. People aren't this honest. They aren't this open. They don't just say the truth of the deepest part of their heart. We're just trained that way from birth by all of the social pressures and exposures we're surrounded with. But I believe every single word Valen just said. I don't like people, I say, deciding to be honest myself. I don't like fake, and I don't like liars, and I don't like forcing things. I shake my head. I'm so heavy, so filled with such complexity, I don't think I can take anymore, so I have to let some of it out through my lips. I have 4 people in this whole galaxy that I care about. My father, Zayn, Reena, even though she acts like she doesn't like me, and you, Valen. My throat tightens around the last words. I take a second to gather myself, trying to collect my emotions, my thoughts. I don't know that I ever would have listened to 5 words you would have said if I'd known who you were when we first slipped into each other's minds. I confess. I still can't quite find peace in my mind when it comes to anything to do with you, Valen. But I can't lie. I'm scared, because every time we've touched, I've seen things. The past, or the future. But I can't stop myself. I reach out and touch the back of my knuckles to his. There's this feeling in my chest, a pull, a weight. I feel like I'm falling forward, and there's nowhere to land but here, with Valen. I want you there in my head, and it feels like a slam miracle that you're standing here with me right now. I'm so scared. Because I remember this feeling in my chest. I've experienced it once before, when Zayn and I had danced around smiles and words at work. When we'd worked our way up to that first outing together. And for weeks after, walking home together, stolen glances and heated kisses in the crowded streets of the endless city. I remember feeling like this once before. But what I felt before held the brightness of the moon. As my skin touches Valen's, and I look up into his neon blue eyes, this holds the brightness of the sun. And I know I'm going to get burned and marked for life.
Do you still love him?
I want to erase all the words that just came out of his mouth. They sound dirty and tainted. But he asks them, and the question deserves an honest answer. I feel like I should, I say, and I let my hand drop back to my side. I did once. He's kind and reliable, and I know he still wants us to be together. But I try to pull my thoughts together, to gather them from the air and make them make sense.
But what?
Valen prompts. I blink 3 times before I answer. I lift my chin, looking out at my new home. Space. I do still love him, I say. And something lifts in my chest at the confession. He is my family. I'm never going to be able to let him go, because in the end, he's my closest friend. Besides you, I think to myself, but I can't say that out loud, because it doesn't make any sense. My best friend can't be the second most notorious villain in the galaxy. But I don't love him the way I used to, I say. And I think I hear Valen breathe just a little easier. I can't ever love him the way he thinks he still wants me to. Those days are over. And the people we used to be, who loved each other, those people don't exist anymore. He just hasn't realized it yet. I feel good. I feel a little lighter having found the truth and set it down, outside of me. I need to be open and honest more often.
I shouldn't care,
Valen says, and I look at him once more. His eyes drop from mine, and that alone makes my chest tighten and my heart beat a little faster.
But I'm so glad you don't.
My heart has taken to the speed of a Class 2 ship about to take off into slipstream. My ears are raging with the sound of my wild blood. Valen. I say his name, but I'm not sure what else I'm going to or should say. I turn, slightly angling my body toward him.
I knew you were special after having you in my head for a few weeks,
he says. He speaks faster, his words sounding a little urgent.
I knew you were different, and I craved your company like I haven't wanted anything else, Nova. But when I saw you for the first time...
He meets my eyes, and his are bright and wild and full of... I don't know.
You stunned me.
The breath is trapped somewhere in my chest. I can't catch it, can't find it. I felt the same way when he removed his mask, and I saw his face for the first time.
You're fascinating and smart and clever and cunning,
Valen says. He shifts, standing just a little closer.
And you're beautiful, Nova.
I don't like people. Letting Zayn in was a big deal for me, so my experience with compliments and sincerity is limited. Zayn always said I was pretty, but no one has ever called me beautiful. My mouth moves, but I still don't have words. Valen comes a step closer, and there's only a little bit of air between us.
What are you doing to me?
The words breathe over his perfect lips. He raises his right hand, and my entire body sparks with electricity when he cups his hand gently behind my neck. Who am I anymore? I ask myself, but the words come out between my lips. I feel like I'm on fire, but it's the best slam feeling I've ever experienced. I feel like life and energy, and my senses are so heightened and real. I feel real. I feel alive. Valen's eyes are so electric and intense, and I feel him inside of me. I let that door swing open between our minds. I shove it wide with a blast. He wants me, and I've never wanted anyone so bad. Do it, I beg him inside my mind. Because I am not brave enough to make the move myself, but he is a Nero, and he's seen the entirety of the galaxy. If anyone can do this, it's Valen. Do it. He closes the distance between us, and his lips claim mine. A breath escapes me, and I don't know if I'll ever breathe the same again. I'm not going to function the same ever again when eventually Valen steps away and lets me go. But for now, my hands rise up, gripping his strong arms, holding him tight to me. My lips soften under his, and they part just slightly. But his tongue doesn't invade my mouth. His lips are parted just a bit, too, and he breathes. That doorway between our minds is still open. I feel what he's feeling. A change, an evolution, a supernova of chaos and passion. Finally, I draw a breath in. I take a step forward into him. It should have shoved him back, made him take a step back to brace himself, but he remains firm, unmoved, and our bodies are pressed into one another. His other hand rises, mirroring the other's position. His fingers splay into my hair, and he tips my head back. My mouth opens, and it's not enough, but fills me to the brim. I breathe him in. He's everywhere. In my chest, in my head, in my soul. Greedily, I grip his tunic in my hands, pulling him harder to me, even though it's not possible, because there's no more room between our two bodies. We're two beings occupying one small space in the galaxy. He presses his lips to my lips, and my mouth closes, mirroring his. I love his lips. I love the way his lips feel against my lips. Slowly, he shifts, kissing the corner of my mouth, his hand cradled against my neck so gently. I tilt my head just slightly, my eyes in the back of my head. A moment later, I feel his lips, gently, so softly, press against the side of my neck. A lusty sigh escapes my chest. My entire body is humming. My skin has become a neuron core, dancing and electric and dangerous. I am unstable. I could implode at any moment. I've never felt so slam good in my life. Hungry, I lift my head, sliding my fingers into Valen's black hair, and pull his lips back to mine. In my head, I hear a chorus of words, but it isn't my voice saying them. Mine, Nova, mine, forever, forever, forever. I'm spiraling down into Valen's head, and it's chaos, and it's dark and light, and hope and terror, and so much want and need. I can't even tell anymore where he begins and I end. I can't separate my thoughts from his. Valen, mine. Valen, mine. Now, tonight, tomorrow, forever. But there, in the back of my brain, fighting its way through the fog of desire, is logic. What's happening? Where am I? I can't find myself. I just see this new person, this blend of Nova and Valen, and I see this yawning pit where we're falling, and if I don't pull out now, we're never, ever going to be able to untangle. There's something real down there in that pit. There's something all-consuming and dark. Dark, but not bad. Not in the way that Cyrillius is bad. Not in the way Dominion dominates entire planets. Dark in the way that it blankets everything else and blends all color, never to be separated again. I want to dive into it. Valen is standing there on the edge, and I'm right there. I feel its pull. There are promises down there in the dark, ones that would make everything in life so much easier. But everything is changing right now. I'm changing. Life is a big question mark. I can't go into that dark. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Because I feel it. I can only ever look into that dark pit, only ever fall into it with one person in the entire galaxy. Valen. Valen Nero. Nero. The man I watched kill 11 people. The man who does the bidding of the destroyer of planets. I can't. I can't. But it would feel so good. It calls to me. It's so right. More right than anything in the universe. His hand is on my neck, and his lips are on mine, and my fingers are dug into his tunic like I'm going to die if I let go. Valen, I gasp, and it takes everything inside of me to pull back from him. My lips are swollen, and I can smell him all over me, in my lungs, in my brain. Valen. 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 His grip on me is still desperate. His neon blue eyes are clouded and begging me to jump into the dark with him. We can't do this, Valen. I pant, even though every single word is killing a part of me that just woke up. I can't. I shake my head. My eyes are wild, I know it. They're desperate. Not unless you can walk away. Don't go back to him, Valen. Stay here. Stay with me. Go with me. Never go back. The expression in his eyes. I sense the thoughts in his head. He really imagines it for a minute. The freedom. The release. But I feel it. A series of flashes. Of memories. All bad. All terrible, terrible things. Things that had nothing to do with Dominion, nothing to do with Neron. We're all just a galaxy of survivors. There's this lock around him, a tether, a bind. I feel it, a clear as Neron answer. He's bound to Cyrillius. Don't go back, Valen. The words whisper over my lips. I reach up, touching a hand to his face, caressing it, making him look at me. Come with me. Leave with me. I wish that door didn't exist right now, because I feel the dark gathering, a different kind, the kind that formed in Valen when he saw his parents killed, the kind that formed when that first commanding officer hit him, the kind that formed when Cyrillius dumped him back on Starvis, the kind that embedded itself deep in his heart when he spent a solar of his life as a 14-year-old boy, running for his life as his own people tried to kill him. Life isn't that simple for everyone, Nova. His voice is dark and flat. He lets go of me, but doesn't take a step back. Not everyone can get a few credits and a ship and just disappear into the skies. Not everyone can just start over. He steps back now and turns, walking 5 steps away from me. And why not, Valen? I demand. I feel heat flash into my chest, filling me. You're the most powerful being in the galaxy. You could destroy Cyrillius with one flick of your hand. You could end Dominion. You can do anything, Valen. He stands there with his back to me. His shoulders rise and fall in a shallow way. I wish he would look at me, so he could read me, feel my conviction. But I don't want to see that darkness in his mind. I'm not asking you to do either of those things, I say, my voice calming. I'm not asking you to kill Cyrillius. I'm not asking you to revolutionize Dominion. I feel it, the fight seeping out of me. What I'm asking you to do is simple. Valen stands very still, frozen. He listens to my every word with absolute attention. "Don't go back," I say softly. "Stay here, with me." Emotions well in my eyes. My core shakes. I want him to say yes. I want it so badly, more badly than I've ever wanted anything in my life. "Please." He doesn't breathe for 5 whole seconds. And then he says the words that break my heart. "I can't," he says quietly, and his voice breaks just a tiny bit. He won't explain, and I realize maybe he can't explain. Valen has fractured, broken, a little bit and by big parts over the solars. Maybe he doesn't know why he's mentally held prisoner by Cyrillius. But I can still feel his mind, his emotions. He won't. I can't argue him into it. I stand there frozen, looking at his still shoulders for a solid minute. "Then where does that leave us?" I ask, and a part of my soul escapes out into the universe with the words. I stare at him, hoping and praying to the stars that he will turn around and find some strength of will. But he doesn't turn around. He doesn't say anything. I feel his despair, his loss of hope. I feel him hollowing out, and it's breaking my heart. "We're connected, Valen," I say. My words do not come out smooth. They come out really rough, really broken. But I want him to hear that. I need him to feel it. I'm breaking. After what we just shared, going back is going to hurt. I hope you can feel it too, I say, taking half a step closer, but no more. This link between us, it's never going to end. It's never going to close. I am always going to feel you, and you're always going to feel me. We need each other, Valen. I pause, trying to find words to express how I feel. I can't find them, but they're overflowing in me. So I find that door inside of my mind, and once more, I swing it wide open, and I let it flood out of me and into him. All of the emotions I just felt, all the completeness I felt whenever we talked through the bond, all the hope and the excitement I've felt since he came into my life. I let him see my vision and hope for the future. I know I'm the one going against the future. I know what I saw in my vision. That would be our future if I walked away right now, if I went with him. But I can't. I can't let that version of the future come to pass. So I flood him with my hopes, with my version where he walks away from Dominion and he stays with me. Valen lets out a breath, big and powerful, and his shoulders slump forward a little, like I just ripped something very large and powerful out of him. "That," I say, emphasizing everything I just showed him, "that is not impossible, Valen. You just have to do the simplest thing in the galaxy. You just have to stay." He stands there frozen for another 5 seconds, and they're the longest of my life. Finally, he turns his head to the side a little. "I can't," he says. "I can't give you what you want." I shake my head as I die. But I feel it. He's not lying to me. So I take a breath. I stand a little straighter. I lift my chin. "At least we understand each other," I say, my voice turning flat. "Thank you for coming here. Things are much clearer now." There's still a tiny shred of hope that he'll turn around, that he'll look into my eyes and everything will become clear, that he'll realize he can have his freedom. But he doesn't turn around. So I take a step back toward the door. He doesn't turn around. So I turn. I walk toward the door. But still, just before I walk out, I turn back. And Valen turns, meeting my eyes. In his, I see grief. I see an I'm sorry. I see mourning. But not a change of heart. So I turn, and I walk out. Feeling broken and defeated, I cross back into my ship and tell the Frank to detach. Nine. We all walk back up the ramp, back into the ship. Once we're all safely inside, the Frank enters commands, closing the hatch. We pack away our supplies. We're fueled and ready for another lunar before we'll have to stop on another planet. We're making a mess. Snow sticks to everyone's boots, leaving tracks as we walk around the ship, and as it lifts off the ground and rises off the winter-cursed planet, the snow melts, making the floor wet and slippery. It's been a lunar since I did the unspeakable and brought Valen Nero halfway across the galaxy to get some answers. It's been a lunar since he said the 2 words that broke my heart. I haven't talked to him since. I feel him there in my mind. He never says a word. I just detect his presence there, like he's looking back over his shoulder, like he's wishing, imagining. But he never says a word. So I don't either. I sit next to the Frank as we rise and rise into the sky. I don't even remember the planet's name. It was just a stop, just a temporary pause. It was winter down there. They had plenty of water. We got the food we need to last us a while longer. We're set to make it through to the O sector. Slowly, the white planet begins to get smaller and smaller, and then the Frank orders the ship up to speed, and I'm pushed back against my seat as we rocket back into space. It's only hit me in the last 2 weeks, just how long it's going to take us to make it all the way to the E sector and find the Bahiri. We're 2 lunars into this journey, and it's felt like an entire solar, and we still have at least 8 lunars. I'm so bored. So slam bored I want to scream most days. I was looking forward to landing on that planet for an entire week, and for a while, I considered that maybe Zayn was right. Maybe we need to stop more often. But the more frequently we stop, the longer it will take us to get to the E sector. I need my answers. I need to figure myself out, because I've completely lost who I am. You okay, kiddo? Dad asks as he walks into the command deck. He goes to sit in the seat behind the Frank. I look over at him, even though I don't want to. Yeah, why? He fixes me with those gray eyes that match his gray hair. There are creases spreading back from his eyes, and more of them beginning to spread out from around his mouth. I don't think you said more than 10 words down on that planet, he says, as he rests his forearms on his knees. And I don't think you've engaged in more than 5 conversations in the last lunar. I do look away from him now. I don't want to talk about this. It just adds to the weight in my gut. It's just one more thing that makes me feel like I'm constantly dragging along the ground, like a sack of rocks. I say this only out of concern and love, my father says. I hear the sincerity in his voice. You are your own woman, Nova. You're an adult, and I know you don't need me. But I feel like I don't know who my own daughter is anymore. And I haven't for the last several lunars. What's going on? I don't even know where to begin with that answer. I don't know how much I dare say. I don't know if I can identify all of the specifics of what is tearing me apart and left me with no clue as to who I am as a person anymore. But I think to the last time I did feel good. When I was with Valen, and I was being honest, and he was being honest with me. Just before we left Korpillion, I say, turning toward Torin without looking him in the eyes. You remember when we were trying to get to the airspace and we got separated? I hear my father nod. I had to get around that building that collapsed, I say. I can see it in my head, as clear as if it just happened 2 seconds ago. I ran into Valen Nero there. A word slips over my father's lips. It's quiet, so I'm not entirely sure what he says, but it sounds like a curse, one I've never heard before. I look over at him, and the fear and distress on his face. My heart swells with appreciation for the one man in the galaxy who loves me unconditionally. Did he hurt you? He asks. No, I think. Yes, my heart screams into the abyss of space. I shake my head. We talked. I don't know what happened, how the opportunity came into being. Really. Neither of us understands the bond and connection we share. We talked about good and evil, about fate and control. My father is very quiet. He's mulling it all over, unsure what to think about it all. He has this conflict inside of him, I say. I feel myself turning inward, pulling into myself and into my thoughts and my memories and experiences. It's like he's trapped by his own mind. I don't think he's as evil as the galaxy has made him to be. He's helped Cyrillius take over dozens of planets, Nova. I'm sucked back into the room with the sound of Torin's voice. He's killed countless innocents. We all have our free will. If he had any good in him, wouldn't he walk away? Wouldn't he put an end to Cyrillius? There's that word again. Good. Is there really any of it left? Does it still exist? I think he wants to, I say, my voice little more than a quiet whisper. But for some reason he can't. We're quiet for a long moment, and then I finally remember that I brought this up. I opened up about this when my father asked why I hadn't been myself lately. I haven't been able to stop thinking about it, I say, clearing my throat and trying to make my brain think logically again. I know he's done a lot of evil, but he also let me go, Dad. My father's surprise at that isn't hidden. I guess the encounter has just left me with a lot of soul-searching questions, I say, bringing focus back to the conversation. It's made me question a lot of things, myself included. I appreciate that he doesn't say anything immediately, doesn't default to the first thing that comes to his mind. He takes a minute, finding wisdom instead of instinct. It's okay to question yourself, Nova, he says. Finally, I let my eyes rise to meet his. Otherwise, we get stuck in a rut. We don't allow ourselves to grow. It's okay to have to find who you are more than once. But you're washing out lately, Nova. Your sand scattering across the floor, getting spread thinner and thinner. You need to figure out what your purpose is again. You need to find a reason, a goal. He leans forward, placing his hand on my knee. You're one of the most driven people I know. People like you, they don't thrive when they don't have something they're reaching for. Find your passion again, and I think you'll find yourself once more. I take a deep breath. I feel a spark in my chest, the first I've felt in a lunar. I nod. My brows furrow together a bit. Thank you, I say, and I mean each word. You're so much more than this, kid, he says, reaching up and brushing a thumb over my cheek. It's time to get back to being the queen you'll always be. I offer him a small, broken smile, and I know he's right. I have to find a way to start being me again. "10. Why do I get the feeling you're lying to me?" Zayn says as he looks over at me from the co-pilot's seat. "Because you're a distrusting worry barnacle," I say, without looking at him. I see the data blinking on the hollow screen, showing all the information before we begin our descent. "Just a few weeks ago you were lecturing me about being in a hurry," he says, folding his arms over his chest. "We just stopped for supplies 8 days ago. We're set. So why are you so determined we go a full day out of the way to go to Lazia?" "This isn't your ship, Zayn," I bite. "Just because you can fly it doesn't mean you're the boss. My ship, my schedule." He looks at me like I just slapped him. I know I was just way, way too harsh, but I'm just so slam sick of having to explain myself to him. To anyone. Hazards of having people you care about. "I would think you wouldn't complain too much about stretching your legs and getting fresh food," Reena calls him out. I look at her with surprise and appreciation. She so rarely takes my side or has my back. Zayn glares at the both of us, but looks back out the view window, at the blue and green planet we're approaching. Lazia is one of those planets I could never, ever have afforded to move us all to. It's the largest planet in the P sector. With not a trace of Neron on it, its population is surprisingly under control, considering it has a variety of terrain, the vast majority of the planet is livable, and it has fantastic natural resources. 5 families own most of the planet because they've inhabited it for 8 centuries, long before Dominion came and started taking over the galaxy. They've kept the prices sky high, so very few can actually afford to live on the planet. They take care of their workforce, have specific housing for them, so the elite rich don't have to do the grunt jobs. They educate their citizens so they can keep rising, keep improving their planet. It's a beautiful planet filled with smart, educated people. But they're know-it-alls, with their noses turned up at everything. We sit down at the busy airspace, and an attendant is waiting for us as soon as the hatch opens. I pay the landing fee, a whopping 3,000 credits, just to land here and leave the ship for a full day, and then he calls a transporter to pick us up and take us into town. "I need a full day here," I say, as the 4 of us slip into the luxurious transporter. The seats are soft, some kind of leather. There are complimentary drinks in a refrigerated cooler in the center of the seats. Cool air is filling the space. The windows are crystal clean and clear, giving us a view of the pristine buildings that surround us and the mountains beyond. "Dad, you and Zayn can go do whatever you like in town, but I need some time to myself." I don't look at Zayn. I'm not in the mood for scowls. "I don't like this, Nova." But fathers are fathers. "Everything I'm doing today is completely legal," I say, looking over at Torin. "You don't have anything to worry about." "Then you shouldn't be so against me coming with you." I don't have time for this. I'm a grown woman. I have my own life to worry about. "I have Reena running an errand for me, so don't bother her." I ignore my father's last statement instead of arguing. I pull out my holo tab and look up the information, double-checking the address I pulled up earlier. "I just gave you all an extra 1,000 credits." I tap my connect link, and then each of theirs ding, the money received. Go have some fun. Enjoy the time on the ground. The transporter rolls into the middle of town, which is a series of impeccably organized city blocks with clean, beautiful architectural buildings, none of them more than a dozen stories high. It's the opposite of Korpillion. If they weren't all so stuck up here, I think I'd actually like living here. We stop alongside the curb. "I'll meet you all back at the Corsair tomorrow evening." I say. I don't make a move to get out, and it takes them all 2 seconds to realize this was my invitation to make themselves scarce. They slip out of the transporter. The moment they've closed the door, the driver takes off, headed for the address I gave him. We drive across town, out toward the north edge of it. Here, the buildings become simpler, with less flourishes and natural beauty, and more simple lines, concrete and working transports. But no less clean. I see it up ahead, and recognize the company name as the one I looked up. The building is solid gray, broken up by enormous windows that overlook town. It's so clean, I can hardly fathom it. We had warehouses and buildings like this back on Korpillion, all the bases for towering skyscrapers, but they would have been covered in grime and dusty smoke. Be back here to pick me up in 3 hours, I instruct the driver as I pay him the credits for the drive. He gives an affirmative nod. I step out, looking up at the shining building, and suddenly, I feel out of place. I've been trying to find my place, taking charge and making decisions. I had so much confidence and bravado on the ship. But now, I realize that it was only because I was the one who has access to all the credits Valen gave me, and everyone sees the ship as mine, since the anonymous rescuer sent its location to me. But I'm not really anyone. I'm a maintenance worker, a grease monkey. I have no leadership skills, and I don't even like people that much. But like my father said, I need to rediscover who I am. And maybe this is part of it. So, pulling my confidence back in, I walk up the 4 steps that lead to the great front door and let myself in. I am a good liar. That much I know about myself. I can fake it when I need to. And as I talk with the director of this manufacturing company, I fake like I know what I'm doing. I fake that I know how to do business. I fake the handshakes and the smiles. But looking at the tools and equipment his company makes, that is real. I know a good forge when I see one. My eyes light up in excitement over the compact design I never would have even dreamed of. I have to hold in an excited scream over the latest forging and welding tools. I'm drooling over the quality of steel and titanium. I've never seen anything like it. 3 hours later, I transfer 80,000 credits to the man and his company. He allows me to personally oversee his crew, loading up a large transport vehicle with everything I just purchased. My driver arrives just in time. I tell him to follow the company transporter, and then I oversee everything as the crew members unload the supplies from the transporter and put everything in the maintenance room on our ship. I tip the delivery people, which kills me a little bit. I'm bleeding money today. But I have to do something. I have to find myself again. Once more, the driver takes me back into town, and I get out on a random street. Alone, I wander the streets, ducking into a shop for food when I'm hungry. My taste buds still explode at real food every time I eat it. And then I pick up a new tunic and a new pair of real leather fingerless gloves to go with the boots I acquired on Stipe. That night, when I get to a hotel, the most luxurious and expensive thing I could have imagined, I check how many credits I still have. I'm still at over 3 million. I've nearly burned through all the credits I'd saved before Valen dumped so much of his into my account. But it will still take me solars to spend everything he gave me to escape doomed Korpillion. I know that was his plan. He wanted me to get far away and never have to think about turning back. I shove thoughts of Valen out of my head and step into the nicest, biggest, most over-the-top shower I've ever seen in my life. And I let myself enjoy it. "11. The next morning, Reena sends me a message that she acquired all the Neron I asked her to get. I figured this was her world before. She was the most likely person to find the underground people I knew were on every planet, selling small shards of Neron for sky-high prices. I can't make new Neron weapons without any Neron. I told her I needed 20 pounds and not to come back with any less. I smile as I step out of the hotel in fresh clothes, knowing it's mission accomplished. We can leave the planet now, but I'm not quite ready. Anything could happen on this planet, but I know exactly what's waiting for me on that ship. Turning right outside of the doors, because why not? I set off wherever my feet might take me. The people on Lazia are friendly, but in the fakest way I've ever encountered. They offer thin-lipped smiles and a flat, "How are you?" but they aren't looking for a real answer. Their eyes and their bodies move on before I ever get the chance to open my mouth. They're all dressed impeccably, and it takes me a moment to realize they're all dressed in the same black, white, and emerald green color scheme. There are exceptions. Most of the working class wears solid black, or the occasional gray. I look down at myself. My boots are black. My pants are a lighter gray. My tunic is black, buttoned up high to my chest, with Neron blue stitching. My fingerless gloves are black. Almost everyone on this planet has black, or nearly black hair. I'm standing out in a wicked obvious way. But somehow, I don't care. I'm leaving this planet in just a few hours. I eat breakfast, some kind of egg and red vegetable combination that I realize I don't actually care for. The first non-Korpillion food I've eaten that I haven't greatly enjoyed. I head toward a park that's spread out on the east side of town. There are birds here, flying around, diving toward this old woman who sits alone and is feeding them some kind of seed. Entertained, I find a bench and sit, watching as they swirl and dive around her. It's a really nice, beautiful day. But feet pounding the pavement across the park wrecks the whole thing. I see a boy running, some kind of food in his hand. He eats it desperately, like he's trying to down it before anyone sees. He ducks behind a massive sculpture of some sort of animal I've never seen before, and looks around the corner of it as he wolfs down whatever it is he's eating. I look in the direction he does, and see a merchant at the far end of the park, looking every direction. He takes off along the side of the park when he doesn't see anyone, in the opposite direction. The boy stands back up, walking farther away from the merchant, but I now realize he's not a boy, but a young man, probably just a few solars younger than myself. He's just gangly, but certainly taller than I am. He continues gobbling down the food in his hands. The second it's finished, he tosses some kind of core away into the bushes. He's halfway across the park now, heading in my direction, but a bit farther north, when 3 men in uniforms step onto the grass. The boy freezes. His eyes flick to mine, and then to the officers. They approach me, and I tell myself to keep calm. It isn't me they're looking for. "Have you seen a young man running through the park?" one of them asks, as they approach me. I notice their hands are on their guns, and one of them looks at the young man as if he's trying to determine if he's the suspect. He's only saved from being shot because he's walking casually. If he runs, they'll instantly know it's him. The look in their eyes tells me they'll shoot him. "He's a serial thief in the market, and it's imperative we put an end to his illegal activities," the first officer continues. My eyes slide over to the young boy, and the look in his own is desperate, begging me not to say a word, but he's trying so hard to look unsuspicious. "No, officer," I say, looking back at him. He's intimidating in his black and green uniform. "I can't say I've seen anyone like that. It's just that old woman over there and me and my brother. Elias," I call out toward the young man. "We need to get going." Slowly, he starts walking toward us. You aren't from Lazia, the officer states. I shake my head. My brother and I are on our way to Dragar, I say, hoping my lies sound as smooth as they do in my head. We both got new jobs there, but we headed out earlier than needed. We thought we'd kill some time here. I've always heard such nice things about Lazia. The boy slows as he approaches us, standing just a dozen yards off, watching us warily. The officers are studying him, but they obviously don't know what the culprit looks like. We're lucky the merchant didn't show up with them. If you see anything suspicious, let us know, the officer in charge says. He gives the boy one last look and then turns, taking the other two with him. We watch them as they walk away, across the park, and then finally they cross the street. Just as they step to the other side, one of their connect links goes off,
blaring an embarrassing song.
So loud, I can hear it clear as day. My brows furrow, and the man frantically tries turning it off, while his coworkers yell and laugh at him. I glance back at the boy, and he's tapping at something on his own connect link, a smirk on his face. How'd you do that? I ask. The connect links are supposed to be secure. He grins again, and it's kind of a terrifying thing. Not as secure as the distributors want you to think. The officer is just lucky he didn't actually try to shoot me. I don't think he would have liked the results. I have no idea what he did to the officer's gun, or how, or when he pulled it off. But he kind of makes me smile. Thanks for your help, he says, taking a few steps forward. I'm kind of down to my last infraction. If they would have caught me, well, this would be my last day contributing CO2 to the planet. He starts to walk away. Hey, I call out, and he pauses, looking over his shoulder. He's a unique-looking young man. He's a few inches taller than me, his frame slim, and I'm guessing he must be starving since he's a serial food thief. But he looks like he'd be naturally skinny anyway. His hair is a lighter brown, lighter than most on this planet. His eyes are a greenish blue. But he looks tired, like his eyes are permanently puffy, and he hasn't gotten sleep in 4 days. And his bottom lip is just slightly cracked, like it was split a few days ago and is just now starting to heal.
Where are you going to go?
I ask. And I don't know why I say the words, but I do. You just said they're going to kill you if they catch you. Most definitely. That terrifying little smile curls on his face when he says it. It's scary, because it isn't just on his lips. It's in his eyes. Mischief and chaos and reckless abandon. Without another word, he turns and sets off. I shake my head in wonder over the strange young man. I check the time on my Connect link and head back to town for my last few items. I hit a bookstore. They're hard to find anymore. I think there was only one left on the whole planet of Korpillion. Storytellers are now few and far between. I ask for some recommendations, and the shop owner picks 4 titles out for me. I wander through a beauty shop next. I pick up a few items, just a few skincare products I've never heard of. And then I smile over a stick of kohl eyeliner. I grab it, even though I doubt I'll ever use it for its intended purpose. I buy a black rucksack at another store, tossing all of my things inside it and slinging it over one of my shoulders. With lunch over, I work my way across town, back to the pickup location so I can head to the airstrip. The sound of feet on pavement pulls my head to the side, between 2 buildings in a narrow alleyway. A skinny figure darts down the alley and ducks behind a garbage bin, instantly slipping away. Down the alley, I see the same 3 officers who questioned me, slow at the alley. Unable to see anything, they rush on by. He's going to die. He's not very good at hiding, or running for that matter. If I keep coming across him, he's eventually going to run right smack into one of those officers. All for stealing food because he's starving. He stands, looking down the alley. With a scowl on my face, I take a step toward the alley. His head whips toward me when he hears my footsteps, poised to run again. But his eyes grow big when he sees me, and spark with hope.
"Hey, are you really not from Lazia?"
he asks, his voice out of breath. "No," I answer, folding my arms across my chest when I step into the alley.
"How soon are you leaving?"
he asks. "In about 2 hours," I respond, against my better judgment. "Why?" A manic seriousness fills his eyes as he steps out from behind the garbage can. There's a dirty bag slung over his shoulder. It's well-worn and looks stuffed to the brim. If I had to guess, I'd say everything he owns is probably in that bag.
"Because they're going to catch me, and then they're going to kill me,"
he says, his voice breathy and deadly serious.
"Unless I get off this slam planet."
His plea tugs on my heart. I want to be iron-willed and tough and protective of everyone on my ship. But I know it. He's going to die if he stays on this planet. "I don't know anything about you," I say, looking him up and down. He looks wild and feral, but not exactly dangerous. Not even your name. Why would I let you escape on my ship? Why would I risk harboring a wanted criminal? He takes a step forward, jumping violently when he hears footsteps down the alleyway. But it's just passing pedestrians.
"My name is Edan Calwyn,"
he says, his voice sounding desperate. "And I will do anything you want, be your slave boy until you make your next stop, anything you ask, if you just get me off this slam planet." His eyes are desperate, but doubtful. This is a kid who's had it hard his entire life. He reminds me of the wild orphans who lived on the streets back on Korpillion. He doesn't expect me to help him. He thinks he's going to die today. I curse under my breath. I can't let him die. "Come on," I concede. "I need to get in touch with my crew and we can leave." The relief on his face is astronomical. His eyes widen with surprise and hope.
"Thank you,"
he breathes. He looks back over his shoulder, jumpy and terrified. "You don't happen to have a hood or something, do you? They've got cameras all over this planet, and I'd say they're going to find my face in an hour or less. Maybe yours, too. They'll know you lied to them." I swear again. Nothing like becoming a wanted criminal on a planet you know nothing about in less than 24 hours. I swing my bag off my shoulder and rummage through for the stick of coal I just purchased. I knew I'd use it eventually. I just didn't expect it would be within 10 minutes. "Come here," I say, taking it out of its packaging and tossing it on the ground. This planet could use a little tarnishing. Edan comes close, and I can smell him. I'd guess he hasn't showered in 5 days, but try not to wrinkle my nose at him. With the coal, I line his eyes, smearing it out until it fades into nothing. I pull his hair into his face, trying to hide as much of it as I can. I step back, looking at my work. He looks even gaunter than before. His eyes seem so vivid now. For good measure, I spread some of the coal on his lips, making them look bigger than their natural shape. "There, the facial recognition scanners won't be able to pick up on your face now," I say. Knowing the clock is ticking, I turn to a window, looking at my reflection in the perfectly shiny surface. I quickly line my eyes, smudging it back toward my hair, up into my eyebrows. If you blend enough facial features, the scanners get confused. I smile at my reflection, feeling like I'm looking at an old, familiar friend when I see myself with my mask. "12. We should probably stick to back streets," I say, putting the black stick away in my bag and re-shouldering it.
Do you know any back routes to the airstrip? Edan nods.
This way.
We dart down the alley, back the way he came. Darting down back roads of Lazia is not the same as going down back alleys on any other planet. There's no trash to leap over. There are no shady deals going on in dark corners. There are no homeless people bickering over the best covered areas to sleep for the night. Which throws up some red flags when it comes to Edan. Why does he look and smell like he's homeless? Why is he starving so much that he's resorted to stealing food? Why does he look so roughed up when the rest of this planet is so pristine? But I remember the crazed desperation in his eyes. I know without a doubt those officers would kill him. People don't deserve to die if they're stealing food for survival.
This way,
Edan says. Reaching out for me, he grabs my fingers, gripping my hand as we quickly cut around a corner.
We're gonna have to walk across the street,
he says, as we suddenly stop at the edge of a building.
The airspace is that way. No other way to get there.
We're getting toward the edge of town where there are still commercial buildings, but they begin to thin out before we get to the vast open space and terminals of the airspace. We're stopped at an intersection with a travel center right across the road and a fueling station on either side of it. We're standing just to the side of a hotel, and on the other side of the road is a building full of food stations. There are dozens of people all around, all headed somewhere. And I can see 24 cameras just from here. You're sure there isn't another back way to the airspace? I hiss. My pulse is pounding. I'm having regrets. I'm already wanted by Dominion. I didn't need to become a wanted accomplice clear out here on Lazia. Edan shakes his head.
Not unless we take the long route, but that would take us at least 2 hours.
I look down at my Connect link. We don't have that kind of time. My crew is supposed to meet back at the ship in just 1 hour. I swear. I do a lot of that these days. "'Kay," I say, looking back out into the crowded intersection. "We're gonna go straight across the intersection here. We're aiming for the side of the travel center. Keep your head down. Don't look anyone in the eye. Got it?" Edan nods, his wild eyes scanning the intersection.
Got it.
I tip my head down, letting my hair fall around my face. I don't look up, and I step out into the street, my hand fixed around my staff, ready to activate it at any moment. I keep Edan's hand held in mine, tight. Too tight. I know I'm squeezing hard, probably hurting his hand. But I'm scared. I don't like this. I don't like being a criminal with a known face. We make it across the street, and we're about to head down the side of the travel center when a hand clamps down on my arm, jerking me to a stop.
Oh, she is indeed a pretty one.
A man with a crooked smile, greasy hair, and bad clothes that tell me he's not from this planet smiles in my face, just inches away.
You're an awfully brave little thing, jumping planet to planet, showing off your face with your cute little mask. Dominion is going to be awfully happy to get a visit from us.
His grip on my arm tightens as I try to jerk away from him. My teeth clench together, but sweat breaks out onto my palms.
Thanks to the Kinduri, yours is one of the most well-known faces in the whole galaxy, Nova Ainsley.
Hold your breath, Edan whispers in my ear. I'm just about to ask him what, because I'm not sure I heard him right. But I hear a hissing sound. The man is gripping me so hard, I know I'm going to be bruised, but he suddenly lets go, and his eyes grow wide. I look back just in time to see the manic smile on Edan's face as he drops some black object. It immediately explodes with black gas. I suck in a quick breath and barely keep on my feet as he yanks me forward, away from the crowd. Everyone within 10 feet of us cries out in pain, dropping to their knees. And then they're silent as they fall flat on their faces. "What was that?" I demand once we're past the block and I've regained my balance, pulling out of his grip. "What did you do to them?"
"Nerve agent, I think,"
Edan explains, looking up and down the road. It's clear. Straight ahead is the private entry to the airspace. There's a row of restrooms to the side, and I grab Edan, dragging him into one of the stalls with me, locking the doors behind me. "You think?" I demand, going straight to the sink. I get my hands wet and set to scrubbing my mask off. If it's making me more recognizable, that's the last thing I need.
"I took it off a man who didn't need it anymore,"
he says, standing beside me and scrubbing his face. But he does a slag job of it and leaves black streaks all over his face. "What are you, a petty street thief?" I ask, turning back to him with rage in my eyes and water dripping down my face.
"Nothing as simple as that,"
he says, wiping his chin on his sleeve.
"You're welcome, by the way. I just saved your head back there."
With a start, I realize he's right. I couldn't have fought off that man, not unless I used my Neron staff, and that would have killed him. He might have dragged me onto a ship, and we could be headed straight for Cyrillius at this point. "Guess we're even at this point," I say, staring him down. "Thank you." He stands by the door, ready to leave.
"Just get us off this slag planet, Nova Ainsley."
I can't explain it. But him saving me back there, I'm looking at this scrappy kid differently. I kind of like him and his manic, crazy eyes. I kind of want him on my team, and I don't even know him. Come on. We step back out and head for the entry. I scan my Connect link as we walk by, and through the crowd, Edan slips inside. I should have called a transport. It would have taken us straight to the ship. But soon enough, we're back outside, and I'm walking across the pavement to our ship.
"This is yours?"
Edan asks through the brilliant sunlight as we walk up to the sleek black machine. Sleek, except for the patched hole on the far side of it. "You like?" I say with a touch of a smile as the hatch opens when I approach.
"Didn't realize being on the galaxy-wide wanted list had so many perks,"
he says. I look over my shoulder at him and see that same wicked smile spreading on his lips. I smile back, and he follows me up the ramp. Besides the Frank, it's empty. No one has returned yet. Good. That gives me some time to figure out how to handle breaking the news about our newest passenger. "Shower is back through the living quarters," I say, walking across the command deck. I open the door, showing him the way. "Use what you need. I don't need you looking like a homeless street rat, so do a good job cleaning up. Is anything in that bag clean?" My eyes go to the bag hanging from his shoulder.
"Relatively,"
he says, but the look in his eyes tells me relatively is indeed the right term. "Washer is right next to the shower," I say, trying not to make a face. "Get all your stuff clean, but pick your best clothes for now." Edan nods, and I see appreciation in his eyes, but he hesitates before stepping into the washroom.
"Are you going to tell them the truth?"
he asks.
"About me?"
I study him for a long moment, and I let the question sink in. "I don't know," I finally confess. "Get cleaned up. They'll all be back soon." I walk out, leaving Edan to it. Just as I walk out onto the command deck, my father and Zayn walk onto the ship. Zayn has far more packages than I expected. "You realize there's only so much room on this ship, right?" I tease him, though my tone comes out sounding more serious than intended. "Yeah, well," he bites back, but not as hard as I expected.
When you dump me on a random planet and say go play while I get illegal slag, it's not my fault for going overboard.
I chuckle and shake my head.
Everything go okay, kiddo?
Dad asks as he walks over to one of the seats and sinks into it, kicking his feet up.
Couldn't have gone smoother,
I say, giving him a small, reassuring smile. And that part of my time on Lazia couldn't have. Just a few moments later, Reena comes walking up the ramp. She has a rucksack on her back and another she carries in her left hand. She walks up and drops both on the table. They land with a loud, breaking glass clang. One of the bags falls open, revealing the crystal Neron, wrapped up in careful packaging, but still glowing brilliantly through.
Guess that answers things,
Zayn says, eyeing it with annoyance.
Find a hobby yourself,
I say, turning away from him and looking through the bag. There's enough Neron here to arm nearly 100 weapons. It will take me my entire life to build this many weapons. No more getting bored on this ship. Let's get going, Frank, I say, zipping up the bags and giving Reena an approving nod. Resume the course.
I am detecting our load is significantly heavier than when we landed,
he reports in his calm voice. Like he said, Zayn was bored, I say, giving him a smirk. They knew I was getting unique supplies, and now that they know just what it was I picked up, no one is going to question our ship being heavier. No one would guess that there's an extra 150-pound biological organism aboard. I'm stalling. I've got about 5 minutes until I spill the secret, because then it will be too late, and no one can argue with me.
Please be seated,
Frank says, and I feel the engines humming to life. Each of us takes a seat, and I just hope Edan doesn't slip in the shower while we take off. We rise, humming toward the takeoff strip. There isn't a line here, nothing like we had on Korpillion, as everyone tried to escape. We line up and are immediately given clearance. And then we're taking off, rising out of the atmosphere, and the Frank gets us into slip speed. Once we're set on our path, I unbuckle and sit up, preparing for the fallout. I have something to tell. Is the water running? Reena questions, her brows furrowing as she looks toward the living quarters. Just then, it shuts off, and I can hear the noise of Edan stepping out, cursing like he's in pain. I can just imagine the tumbles he must have suffered as we got up to speed. Who the void is on our ship? My father's voice booms as he stands, grabbing his axe from the wall where it is secured. Hold on. I jump, getting to my feet and going to stand in front of the door that leads to the living quarters. I hold my hands up, because Zayn is pulling his hilt from his belt, fear and death in his eyes. I was just about to tell you all. I, found a friend down on Lazia. A friend? Zayn demands, his eyebrows shooting toward his hairline. You brought someone on board? My eyes are tempted to look away from his, but I don't let them. This is my ship. This is my call. He saved me back there, I say, standing tall, looking confident. He's got some useful skills. He needed off that planet, and I owed him one. That's a lie. I'm way ahead getting him off the planet. The door behind me slides open, and a surprised and wary Edan steps out beside me. His hair is still wet, but he's clean, and he smells 20 times better. He wears black trousers and a gray and emerald green tunic. That's going to have to change, because they scream Lazia resident. I guess she hasn't introduced me quite yet, he says, his eyes scanning the crowd. Zayn and my dad are still in defensive, fighting positions. But Edan doesn't cow, doesn't look afraid. He looks ready for a challenge.
I'm Edan.
Everyone looks from Edan to me and back to Edan. You might have... But my father is cut off by the sound of alarms. "13. What's going on, Frank?" I yell. The next second, I'm nearly knocked off my feet as our ship jerks violently to the side. "Another ship is attempting to dock with us," the Frank reports. His voice is calm and even as ever. "They are overriding our locking mechanisms." Zayn darts to the co-pilot's seat, and his fingers dash across the holo display, trying to override their override. "Who the void is it?" I demand, going to the viewport, but I can't see anything considering our dock is on the side of the ship. "Their ship is showing a history of bounty hunting," the Frank reports. "They left Lazia just minutes after us." My eyes flick to Edan, and I know it, and I can tell he knows it. It's the man who grabbed me in the street.
"They're in the system," Zayn yells. I don't know how they're doing this."
"They're after me," I say, taking my staff from my belt. Dominion has a bounty on my head, Reena's too. I dart back into the living quarters, digging through the locker beneath the beds. From my bag, I pull out 2 small handguns. Striding back out onto the command deck, I just slip the Neron shards into the core of the guns when I hear the air rush and a latch unlock.
"They're in!"
Zayn yells, standing from the commands. He grabs his hilt, activating the Neron arc. The entire command deck glows Neron blue. Dad takes a defensive stance, activating his axe, and the blade glows brilliant. "You ever used one of these before?" I ask Edan after I hand Reena the first gun.
Not specifically, but I imagine it's a point and pull the trigger deal, right?
He turns the gun over in his hand, looking it over. "Pretty much," I say. I turn, activating my staff, and both arcs shoot out. I've never had to use any of my weapons to defend myself. I've sparred with Zayn, but never anything real. Today is the day. The hatch rises, and I see 4 sets of boots. And 1 second later, something silver rolls into our ship. A curse slips over my lips. Just at the same time, gray gas leaks from it. They took a page out of Edan's book. Lesson learned. "Hold your breath!" I manage to yell as I suck in my own. I dart forward, my staff ready to swing. I see waists, I see torsos, and just as I swing my staff, as Dad and Zayn rush forward, my feet feel numb. I stumble. But I make sure to swing as I go down. I nick a foot. The scent of burned human flesh is instant. Someone screams. Dad lands beside me, and Zayn just on the other side. I feel like I've been filled with ice-cold slush. It's making me numb and slow. It takes everything I have to lift my head, to raise my eyes up to my assailants. "And we even get proof of the illegal activity," a familiar voice says. "It may be a death sentence, but they sure are pretty. The weapons and the Neron." My eyes meet the gaze of the ugly, dirty man Edan knocked out. Slam him for not stealing a better, longer-lasting nerve agent. Behind a mask, the man smiles. "The price for your capture would make me a comfortable man for the rest of my life." His eyes shift to where Reena was standing just a moment ago, but his gaze falls a little closer to the floor. "But the price on her head? Well,
We'll all be enjoying life on our own private islands on Lazia, with all the calypso and company of synthetic skin we could ever want till the end of our days."
The man I injured swears loudly, hopping on one foot. I'm just grateful he's so distracted by his injury that he didn't retaliate and shoot any of us. I get one hand under me, pushing my upper half up, glaring death at the man. I don't even get a view of his crew. I don't care about them. None of them put their hands on me.
"It says something about a man who fights his enemies when they're on their bellies,"
my father growls.
"Oh, I'm only returning a favor."
The man sneers, with a satisfied look on his face. I flinch when the sound of a gun goes off, and the man I injured drops to the floor. A sizzling hole burns in his chest. I look back and see Edan propped half up, his arm extended, the Neron gun held shaking in his hand. I watch it like it happens in slow motion. The remaining men pull sidearms out, and I know they're going to kill everyone but Reena and me. We're the only ones worth money. A scream rips through my lips, and I try to pull myself to my feet, but my lower half is still numb. I feel it. A rush of hate, a surge of fear, and a connection to everything around me, screaming at me to use it. I extend my hand, and through the air, my still-activated staff rises. I push my hand through the air, and the staff sings forward. It slices through the first man with his finger on the trigger. His top half flops backward, hitting the ground with a thud, and his legs collapse to the ground in a pool of blood. My staff grazes the back of the man I encountered on Lazia, but doesn't kill him. It does the third man, however. It slices through his spine, and his organs spill out his back, though he remains attached in the front. With a look of shock, his gaze goes unfocused, and he collapses to the ground. The man with the greasy hair gives a yell, looking at the men dropping around him. Finding my feeling again, I pull myself up to my knees, panting hard. "Take the bodies and leave our ship," I say through my teeth. My focus wavers, and my staff drops to the ground behind the man. "Nero." The word slips over the man's lips. He says it in awe. "Go," I say. My entire body is trembling, ready to collapse. I don't have a grip on myself, and I don't know how much longer I can hold on to it. But the man shakes his head, even as a little smile begins curling on his lips. "Dominion would pay well for you, but knowing you're a Nero, Cyrillius would kill for a second Nero." He takes a step forward, but it's his words that set me off. I raise my hands, and I feel every ounce of Neron on the two ships and in the space around us. My face contorts in rage. I focus every bit of it on this man, just another survivor in the galaxy. The air glows brilliant blue, but only for a second, before it rushes at the man. And as it explodes into him, he obliterates into a mist of red that lingers in the air, blending with the blue. "14. We all lie there, in absolute silence, as if we're all afraid to speak, because when we do, we're going to have to put words to what just happened. We're going to have to address it. It will make what just happened real. Slowly, I feel the life returning to my legs. I pull myself half up, and Edan gets to his knees too. Reena pushes her top half up. As if it hurts every part of him, my father pulls himself up into a sitting position. Zayn drags himself into the nearest chair. The silence is building and building, and I feel it like a crushing weight pressing in on my chest. I don't know what to say. Maybe I should start the conversation, but I still can't accept this myself. I still don't believe it.
I'm assuming from all this awkward, suffocating silence that none of them knew you were a Nero.
It's Edan who breaks the quiet, and I can't decide if I like him even more now or if I hate him.
You're...
Zayn says, free to speak now that someone has had the bravery to break the silence.
Nova, you're a Nero?
Slowly, I let my eyes slide over to him. I can't quite read the expression on his face, but I'm pretty sure it's mostly filled with disgust. Maybe it's betrayal. And in that moment, I hate him. I really hate Zayn, because I didn't ask for this. I don't want this. I don't dare let myself say anything because it will be too much, too harsh, whatever it is. So I look away from him, and I let my eyes go to my father. All that's in his eyes is regret and pain. I don't understand it. Dad, I don't know what else to say. I don't know what to say to any of them. They're all looking at me in an entirely new way. Slowly, my father pulls himself to his feet. He walks to the co-pilot's seat, but he doesn't sit. He touches the hollow command and types something in. I see our location in the P sector, but the view shifts, sliding, far, far through the galaxy, out, and clear to the far reaches of the Z sector, until it stops. The images I see are crystal clear and absolutely dazzling. It's a planet, surrounded by 5 moons. The sun shines on them, casting them in brilliant, astounding blue light. Blue, because that planet and those 5 moons are engulfed in Neron. It clings to the orbs like static electricity, but the arcs are frozen, arms and branches reaching from one side of the planet to another, to the moons around it.
Before I moved to Korpillion, my father says as he stares at the incredible image displayed, I was a soldier for the Orhemian Imperial Army. My brows furrow. I replay what he's just said over and over in my brain, trying to make sense of it. Before I moved to Korpillion, a soldier. Orhemian Imperial Army. I was on a solo mission, he says, without looking back toward us, toward me. I was the best mechanic in the army. We had a Class 1 ship stranded just outside the Z sector, and I was one of the only ones who knew how to fix it. I was taking a personal Class 5 ship from Orhemia in the X sector, with all the supplies to repair the Class 1. I repaired the ship, but my CO laid into me for taking so long to arrive. I take a step forward on my shaking legs, but they don't have the strength to go any farther. They were quickly running out of food. Water, he says. His voice is deep and dark. They'd been stranded for 2 weeks, and I was their only hope to get that massive ship moving again. But the tech on our Class 5 ships wasn't as great as the rest of the galaxies. It took a long time to get across the 2 sectors. I think about it. My father never told me where he learned his mechanical skills. I remember the confidence he had when I gave him the Neron axe. I think about his weathered and scarred hands. I knew he was only worried for his men and women. He continues a story I have never heard before. But he said things to me no man at another's mercy should say. He presses his fingers against the command dash, and they turn white. I knew then that when I returned to Orhemia, I was going to resign. I'd been in service for 10 solars, and that run-in was the answer to my question of if it was time to retire. His head sags between his shoulders, and I can feel the weight of that decision on him. I left the Class 1 and headed back to Orhemia, cutting through the Z sector. I rack my brain for any knowledge of the Z sector. It's so far out there, so remote, the edge of nothing. I don't think there are even any inhabitable planets out there. I felt this shock rock through my ship, my father says. A ripple, a tidal wave of power. It knocked me unconscious. I don't even know for how long. But when I came to, when I looked out the port window, this is exactly what I saw. My eyes shift back to the display, to that planet and its 5 moons, encircled by more Neron than I ever thought existed in the galaxy. It's the planet Glora Quin Lune, my father says, and there's reverence in his voice when he says the words. The last planet in the galaxy, the edge of nowhere, the most glorious planet in the known universe. There's something about how he says the name that tugs at a place in my chest. Glora. The core of Glora is solid Neron, my father says, as is the core of all 5 of its moons. And before Dominion crushed all whispers of the planet's existence, before something happened on that planet and it exploded into this frozen state, a quarter of its inhabitants were Neros. I blink, my eyes widening. An entire planet and its 5 inhabited moons. A quarter of them were Neros. My mouth opens as I take a step forward, but I don't know what to say. My mind is spinning with too many questions, but I can't sort them out into logical order or logical sentences. I don't know what happened on that planet, but everyone who lived on it is still there, frozen, my father says. I cannot imagine who had the kind of power to cause the explosion that trapped an entire planet and 5 moons, or what kind of weapon could have done that. My eyes shift back to the image, and the thought horrifies me. That trapped beneath all that Neron, there is an entire population, frozen. They were an isolated monarchy. I nearly jump out of my skin when Edan speaks. For a moment, I forgot I wasn't alone with my father. They were strong enough with all their Nero who were devoted to their planet that Dominion didn't stand a chance at conquering them. They lived out here on the edge of the galaxy, at peace, with their king and their queen and their 2 children. My father nods his head, and I have to wonder how Edan knows this, when I've never heard a word about the planet Glora Quin Lune. That's why those who believed the rumors called it the Frozen Kingdom, Edan says. Goosebumps flash across my skin. I saw this with my own eyes, my father says. I could feel the energy. The power was radiating from the planet. I came close enough that all the systems on my ship began to fail. It couldn't handle the surge of energy. So I backed off, and I planned to return to Orhemia and report what I'd seen. Torin's head lifts, and he looks back at the image of the frozen kingdom. But there, right in front of my ship. His voice breaks, and he takes several long moments, gathering himself. He takes 3 deep, quick breaths. Was something impossible, something I couldn't make sense of. I feel frozen, rooted to my place. I feel this sense of anticipation, but also dread. My father turns then, looking at me with bloodshot eyes. It was a child, floating out in space, surrounded by Neron, he says. The words come out as an odd whisper.
I feel something rip in my chest. I feel it crack. I feel like something is pouring into me. You were out there, in space, alive, glowing like a supernova. My heart is racing in my chest, and I can't breathe. Not true. It can't be true. This sounds like a space tale you tell your children at night when you tuck them into bed. Kings, frozen kingdoms, children floating in space, a planet full of Nero. I got you into the ship and you were sleeping, Nova, completely unharmed by the Neron or the vacuum of space that should have killed you. I shake my head, just once, but my father nods his head. You couldn't have been older than 3 solars, he says, his voice breathy. But you were alive. I feel like I'm fracturing inside. I'm cracking. Truth. Impossibility. Everything is different. Nothing is what I thought it was. I tried radioing to Glora, but there was no answer, only silence. And I knew, because I could see it. There were no signs of life left on that planet. Torin continues. The minute you opened your eyes, they filled with tears. You looked so scared. I reached for you to try and comfort you, but the Neron burned me. He holds up his hands, and I see scars I never gave too much thought to. Arcs of red and white cover his palms, lick up onto his fingers, touching the back of his hands and his wrists. But then, like it was nothing, you waved your little arms, and like it was listening to you, the Neron disappeared. He says with awe. Like it listened to you, and you controlled it. He takes a sniff, trying to get control of the emotions ripping through him. He crosses his arms over his chest. Orchemia answers to Dominion, Torin says, lifting his chin. Cyrillius is a direct partner of the Supreme Minister. I knew if I took you back there and they ever found out, he would turn you over to Dominion. And there were rumors that Cyrillius had a child, the first found in decades, who was a Nero. I couldn't let him have 2. Pound, pound, pound. My heart is thundering. My blood is rushing in my ears, so loud I feel like I can hardly hear anything else. So I took you and I ran, my father confesses. I pulled up the database of Neron-free planets. I wanted to get further across the galaxy, but I knew eventually Orchemia would come looking for me. So I went straight to Korpillion and I hid us. It was such a risk. My father was in danger every single day. If I was a toddler who could wield Neron, I could have killed him. I could have wiped out our entire city just because I didn't know how to control my abilities. I don't know why, but you never displayed Nero abilities after we arrived on Korpillion. Your whole life I've watched you, and not once, not until today, have you used Neron again. My father confesses the truth. And I prayed that maybe you weren't really a Nero, that maybe someone else had enveloped you in Neron and sent you into space to protect you. My entire life is a lie. The weight of that hits me in the chest. But when I look at the expression on my father's face, my heart cracks. I cross the command deck in 5 long strides. I envelop him in my arms, burying my face into his neck. Torin was a soldier. He had a life. He had a job. He was from a planet a long way from here. But he gave it all up. To protect me. To raise me like I was his own. Thank you, I say, my voice filled with awe and gratitude. Thank you for everything you gave up for me. My father's arms hold me tight, cradling me into him, just as he's done the past 19 solars.
I love you always,
he says softly into my hair. No matter what, I complete the promise. I understand the promise so much better now. Torin isn't actually my father, not biologically. I have other parents out there stuck on that frozen planet. I don't know if they're still alive or if they're trapped in some kind of stasis sleep. But this man raised me. He's taken care of me. He's loved me. He's kept me safe. This is very touching and all, Reena says. All this acceptance and love after learning the man who raised you lied to you your entire life. But the game has changed now. Learning you're a Nero is a bit of a big deal, so I'll be the first to say it. What now? I release my father and step back, looking out at those who surround us. I see people, regular people who have been sucked up in my life, my illegal activity, and my new identity. I have to believe that the rumors that the Bahiri still exist are true, I say, meeting Zayn's eyes and then sliding to Edan's. That's where I've been headed this whole time, to where we think they might be. But I understand that this is my new life now. If anyone doesn't want to spend their life waiting around for me to figure out mine, I understand. I'll take any of you wherever you want to go. I see the wheels spinning in their heads. They have to consider it. My fate might be a little clearer now, but I've just thrown in a major twist for each of them. My stomach knots. This is my little family. Reena might not really like me, and I've only met Edan today. But we're a unit. We've stuck together, saved each other. And now, we might all have to go separate ways. I think it's time for each of us to do our own research on what we want for our futures, Reena says, bringing logic to a conflicted moment. I look to Zayn. His eyes are hard to read right now. His lips are set in a thin line. I want to know what he's thinking, what he feels about this new development, but he's so quiet. The most interesting person in the galaxy just saved my cack, Edan says, looking up at me with those mischievous eyes. I think I'd like to stick around and see what happens. I offer him a little smile in return, and right then, I know, I'm not going to want him to leave. He's crazy, but I like his bizarre ways. For now, we need to get rid of that ship and the bodies, my father speaks up. My eyes slide over to the hatch and the 3 bodies lying dead between our 2 ships. There's nothing left of the man I vaporized with Neron. It's disgusting. Really, really gross and disturbing. I get blood all over my hands and feet. But Edan doesn't seem fazed by it. He takes care of the guts that spilled everywhere when my staff sliced through the 2 men. He simply scoops them up into a bag he finds aboard the other ship, and then mops up the blood. I'm a little fearful of Edan, but I'm slam grateful I don't have to be the one to do it. With Zayn's help, we carry 2 of the bodies back onto their ship. Reena and my father get the other one. We all shower on the other ship, leaving all the evidence and blood with it. We raid their ship, taking their supplies, food and water stores, equipment, clothing for Edan. We're stuffed to the max on our ship, but we're set to not have to stop for 2 lunars now. When all the work is finished, Zayn takes control of our system again and closes the hatches of the 2 ships. The Frank disconnects us from the bounty hunters, and it gently falls away from us as we set on our course again. "15. I pretend to need to check things in the mechanical room, and no one questions me when I walk in and shut the door behind me. Quietly, I stand in front of the Neron core. I watch its swirling mass, trapped inside the glass. I put my hands against the warm surface, and I can feel it hum. I feel its energy. I feel its size. I feel how long it will last before it's burned up and depleted. We'll make it clear to the A sector before we would need to refuel. That's the beauty about Neron cores. They last a long, long time. My legs still feel shaky and a little numb. I head to my familiar spot, tucked out of the way. I sit, leaning my back against the wall. I feel better, now that everyone knows one of my big secrets. The truth is out there. But with my father's own truth, I'm left with a million questions. The future feels like a gigantic question mark. I feel a little prod against my brain. Not necessarily words. More like when someone is sitting next to me and bumps their shoulder against mine. The unspoken question of, "You okay?" It's been over a lunar since I last spoke to Valen. I've purposefully shut him out, ignored his presence, and he's left me alone. But my mind is spinning. My whole life has been a lie. I say the words down the connection. My father isn't my father. I don't come from Korpillion. My dad always suspected I was a Nero. The words all come out of me in a rush, blasting toward Valen.
But you're not thinking about any of those things right now, Nova.
He responds. And hearing his voice again, it sends a wave of goosebumps flashing across my whole body. Suddenly, I'm back on that stolen ship. Space is at my back, and his hands are on me, and his lips. I claim them as mine for forever. I shove the thoughts aside, hoping he doesn't get an impression of them. What do you know about Glora Quinloon? By his pause, I know this is the last question he expected.
The Frozen Kingdom?
He asks. Yes. Another pause. I feel him collecting his thoughts.
I've seen it myself once, he finally responds. It was out of my own pure curiosity. It's beautiful, but also terrifying.
Why? I ask, my brows furrowing.
10% of the galaxy's Neron is on or around Glora,
Valen says into my mind. 10% of the entire galaxy. The number is staggering.
No one can get within a league of the planet without burning up, he continues. The amount of energy radiating off it will obliterate anyone who comes near.
So everyone on the planet or its moons, they're dead? I question. My stomach knots up, and it's over people I don't remember, people I don't know. I swear I can feel Valen shake his head.
Not necessarily. When whatever happened on that planet occurred, the blast was harsh and quick enough with enough power that everything froze. The Neron isn't arcing. It isn't moving. Neron is in constant movement. But not on Glora. I think everyone down there is in a frozen state.
What if the Neron could somehow be contained? I ask. What if it could somehow be controlled and released? He pauses for a moment.
I think everyone on that planet would wake up. I think it would be like no time has passed for them.
I let the questions and the doubt rage through my mind. It makes no sense to me. It seems too impossible. I get an impression back.
How is anything to do with Neron possible?
I want more answers. I want to see this place for myself. But it is at the opposite end of the galaxy from where I need to be right now.
Are you still safe?
Valen asks into my mind. I think over the past 2 days of meeting Edan, doing something as reckless as inviting him to join my crew. I think of the bounty hunter, the encounters back on Lazia and here on my own ship. I think of their attack. And of ending 3 lives today. I killed 3 people today, I say. And the words leave me feeling hollow and dark. I sense Valen there, searching my mind, like he's trying to discern how I feel about it. I thought I would feel worse about it, because even though it was in self-defense, even though it was to save my crew, I still ended their lives. They'll never breathe again. But I don't feel that bad about it.
We all do what we have to do sometimes,
Valen says. I do hate those words. I shake my head. We're still the deciders of our fate. I could have chosen not to kill those men. And that is what makes me realize that I am no better than him. I could have done something different. I could have somehow pushed them back into their ship. I could have made the ports close. I could have found a resolution somehow that did not end in death. The vision I had comes back to me. Of Valen, of me, of us wearing those crowns with a burning planet behind us. I caused death today. I chose the darker path.
Life isn't as simple as you once thought it was, is it, Nova?
His voice echoes in my brain. I sit there, letting those words sink in. They hit me full force. But I can't let him know. My pride won't let me show him just how much I feel his words. I hate you. Those 3 words swarm around my heart, racing through my head and back down again. I don't let them get near that door, the one leading to the object of my hatred. But right now, I do hate him. I hate that he became my best friend, the person I always had access to, the one I could have such honest conversations with. I hate that I became so dependent on him. I hate that I turned against all my instincts and invited him to come to me. I hate that he kissed me, or I kissed him. I hate that it changed me, that it reached into the deepest pit of my soul, and that I know nothing will ever reach as far down as he did. I hate that he made me want him so much. I hate that I had a little bit of hope that he would walk away from everything. I hate that I still want him. The separation is killing me, and I hate myself for feeling that way. I have to go, I think to him. There's so much more I want to say, but I can't get a grasp on any of them. I feel an impression from Valen. Conflict. Consideration. Reflection. All the things he wants, all the things he wishes were a reality, but all the resignation to things the way they are.
Take care, Nova.
And he walks away from that door, and so do I. My insides are shaking, but I make myself get up. I don't want to be in here anymore. Here is where Valen is. It's where I've gone to him in secret. But no more. I can't. Because it hurts me too much. I walk out of the mechanical room. I step onto the command deck. The Frank is in its position at the pilot's seat. Zayn is in the co-pilot seat, his feet propped up on the dash. He's looking out at the stars. The others must be in the living quarters. There isn't another soul around. I cross the command deck and sit in the seat behind the Frank. I look at Zayn, studying all the pains of his face, his dark, pronounced brows, his strong nose, His face is covered with a week's worth of facial growth. He doesn't look at me, but I know he knows I'm here.
"It's really over between us, isn't it?" he says.
I lean back in my seat, looking out at the stars. "Yeah," I say. I feel like I should be saying more, but I just can't find words. I'm too tired, too exhausted.
"I knew you were changing,"
he continues when I don't have the words.
"That you were doing different things with your life, that it was taking you away from me and the person you were when we were together."
He's quiet for a moment. I wonder if his head is full of confusion like mine is.
"But it's blaringly obvious now, Nova. You were always too big for Korpillion and the tiny life you were going to have there. You're too much for me, for what we were."
I should counter him. I should reassure him that I wasn't what he's saying. But he's captured it exactly with his words.
"I don't know how it's going to play out, but I can feel it, Nova."
He finally turns, looking at me. I see acceptance in his eyes.
"You're going to change the galaxy. You were always meant for more, and now we know how you're going to do it."
He extends his hand out toward me, and I take it, letting him wrap my hand in his big, warm one.
"I get it now, Nova,"
he says, holding my gaze.
"We were good for a while, but people change. I'm ready to find my new self, and I'm finally ready to accept yours."
A small smile forms on my face, and I lean forward. I wrap my arms around him, tucking my forehead into his neck. "You're always going to be my best friend, Zayn," I say. "You're still one of only half a dozen people, at best, that I can stand. But I'm still going to be there. I'm going to stick around so I can meet the new you." And we sit there, surrounded by the arms of acceptance. It's the ending of an era, but the beginning of something new. "16. I slowly blink open my eyes. It's early. Way too early to be awake, I can tell. But something woke me up. A dream? Is someone there? I blink again, rolling over to my side. Maybe I'm not as awake as I feel like I am. Is there someone there? My eyes slide wide open. I'm staring at the wall. The room is quiet, except for the sounds of breathing. But in my brain, I feel a familiar sensation. A door. And there's someone at it, slowly, cautiously opening it. "Hello?" I call out in my mind. My heart hammers. My palms are slick with sweat. It isn't Valen, I'm 1,000% certain of that. "Who are you?" It's a female. She speaks calm and even, but distrustful and wary. Who are you?" I question. "I need you to tell me first, considering we've just developed a link, and as far as I know, all the remaining Nero are here on this planet with me, save the one trying to destroy the known galaxy." She sounds logical. "Other Nero?" I question, because it suddenly hits me what she's saying. "Who are you?" the woman in my head demands. I feel a bristle of power coming from her. Not necessarily aggressive, but intimidating. "I'm no one," I respond. "I just found out I'm not who I thought I was, and I trail off because I don't really know what to say. The more I say, the more all of this becomes reality, and I'm still scared to face it." You just manifested your abilities, the woman prods. I nod, even though she can't see it. Someone told me that the Bahiri still exist, that I should try to find them, that I'd be safe there. The woman is quiet for a moment, as if considering everything I just said. Have you used your abilities to harm anyone? Strange question considering what I just said. Yes. I have to be honest, because she's inside my head, and I can feel it. This is a big deal. Was it in righteous self-defense? She prods further. Yes. I tell her the truth. She takes another moment of consideration. I can feel the wheels turning inside her head, deciding what to do with what I've told her. Do you consider yourself to be a good person? She asks. Would you ever be persuaded to use your abilities for personal gain and power? Would you ever be tempted to become like Valen Nero? My stomach flips. It's not that simple what she just asked. Would I ever be Cyrillius's puppet? Never. Would I ever consider living in the gray area if it meant I could have time, real time with Valen? I would be so tempted. I am nothing like Dominion's puppet, I say, rephrasing the question. And I don't know that there is such a thing as good anymore, but I didn't like killing those men. The woman pauses, taking in everything I said. The Bahiri are alive and well, she says. There aren't many of us left to serve and protect, but there are a few of us, in hiding, biding our time. I would like to meet you. Can I trust you? My heart is thundering with all the information she just revealed. The Bahiri, other Nero, her location. Yes, I breathe. Where are you? She asks. In the P sector, I say. We heard rumors that the Bahiri were in the E sector, so we're making our way there, though it's going to take us lunars still to get there. I swear I can feel her smile, something sly and amused. I'm going to give you coordinates. I want you to go there. You'll know what you're looking for when you see it. What is that? If I am to trust you, I need you to trust me, she says, her voice calm. Maybe I should be more wary, but I get up, being quiet so I don't wake anyone. I slip out of the sleeping quarters and step out onto the command deck. Quietly, I walk over to the Frank. I have new coordinates, I say to the function robot. The woman who has appeared in my head tells me the coordinates, and I relay them to the Frank. He's silent for a moment, calculating the route. The destination is 5 leagues ahead. We will arrive in 1 hour. No way, I breathe. I expected wherever this woman was sending me to be weeks or maybe even lunars away. Not so close. Not just off our original course in the P sector. I'm close. I thought you might be, she says, and I feel her smile again. There's something warm about it, and I can't even actually see it. As I said, you'll know it when you see it. Don't be afraid. Just follow your heart and not your brain. I will see you soon. And just like that, she disappears from my mind. The ship gently changes course, aiming down and toward the right, just slightly. I sink into the co-pilot's seat, my eyes fixed on space outside, even though the Frank said we're an hour away. The woman's words replay in my mind, over and over. Don't be afraid. That statement makes me afraid. Follow your heart and not your brain. I will see you soon. How? How would that be possible?
But I turn inward now, and something in me, some instinct, is saying, do it. Be brave. Alone in the dark, I sit with the Frank piloting the ship. My eyes watch space around us, and I wonder what is waiting for us. I pop in my Autobuds and tap on the icon, one I haven't listened to in some time.
I have horrible news to share with you today.
Arden Black's voice sounds in my ears with weight and grief. My stomach sinks, and I don't even know what's happened.
As you all know, the ultra-populated planet of Korpillion was taken over by Dominion nearly 2 lunars ago, she says. We know what that means. It means mass evacuation. It means a complete change. And while millions have moved off the planet already, the vast majority of the planet cannot afford a ticket to somewhere else in the galaxy.
I know all this. We knew this would be the problem when Reena told me that Dominion would be coming for our planet.
Dominion wants control, Arden says. We've seen that proven over and over and over again for the past 400 solars. Korpillion had more than 28 billion people on it. It's populated from coast to coast. The people there were in the way.
My stomach sinks.
The population couldn't leave fast enough.
My hands grow slick with sweat.
There are 2 companies on Korpillion who supply energy, powering the whole planet. Horn Energy on the northern hemisphere, and Claw Energy on the southern.
My old work. I imagine the massive building, the 4 quadrants, the thousands of employees who worked for each company.
I don't know how they did it, Arden continues, but something happened at Claw Energy, and the entire thing exploded.
A gasp rips from my chest, and I sit up straight.
The blast took out over 10 million people, Arden says.
Her voice is little more than a whisper. My hands go to my chest. I can hardly breathe. I'm trying not to, but I can't help but imagine all the people. What the crater must have looked like after the blast. All that Neron in the cores of those quadrants.
Dominion did this, Arden says. They did it. They killed 10 million people, and Cyrillius won't have any trouble sleeping tonight. And there's no one who will stop him. Not the remaining population on Korpillion, not the armies of Stipe or Lazia or Crade. Certainly not his Nero.
My heart pounds, hard. Arden has said nothing about Valen's involvement in the explosion. He might not have even been on Korpillion when it happened. But he stays. He remains Cyrillius's puppet. Valen is just as guilty.
Where is your promised savior, Evander Nero?
Arden asks the question of a man who has been missing for decades.
Where is the Nero strong enough to free Neron? Where is this Nero you saw who would be able to bring the galaxy back from destruction?
There's a long pause, and sounding exhausted and filled with grief, Arden Black signs off of the black hole of truth. I sit back in my seat, my stomach in knots. I feel like throwing up. So many dead. The planet I grew up on is ruined. I might have hated that planet and wanted nothing more than to get off it. But it was still home, even if it wasn't where I was actually from. Nero. Nero. I think of Arden's last words. Solars and solars ago, Evander Nero saw the future and shared a prophecy that there would be a Nero who could end Dominion, who could save the galaxy from Cyrillius's clutches. There's Valen. There's me. And for a second I feel panic, because Valen certainly isn't going to save the galaxy. I can't be that Nero. I know I don't have that kind of strength.
but I remember where I am headed right now. To a planet with at least one other Nero. My eyes flick to the clock that, for the most part, has very little meaning out here, but is now the most important instrument on this ship to me. 30 minutes left. 20. 15. I shift in my seat, sitting a little taller, looking at the planet we're approaching. It's black. It looks dead. Uninhabitable. 10 minutes, and we aim for the far side of it, like we're circling around this planet no one would ever look twice at. 5 minutes. With my brows furrowed, I stare at the surface of the planet. It looks like it's covered in dark ash, like it burned up hundreds of solars ago, and no one has disturbed it since. 2 minutes. My heart picks up pace, and it's painful. I'm filled with anxiety. I get to my feet, pacing, but unable to take my eyes from the port window. 1 minute. And just then, as we round the far side of the dead planet, I see something. At first, it just looks like more space. But there's a ridge to it, like it's a mirror, reflecting back the view behind us. And then, I notice the ripples, just faintly, like it isn't just a mirror, but also the surface of water. And at the center of it, there is darkness. At first, it seems like there just aren't any stars in that area. But there's a depth to that darkness. I can feel it. You'll know it when you see it. I don't know much about space because I never really thought I'd leave Korpillion, no matter how bad I wanted to. But even I have heard rumors about these. It's a wormhole. Never, as far as I and the public have heard, have they been proven, only theorized. But I know it. In my gut, I can feel it. Be brave. Trust your heart and not your brain. Go into it, my heart says. Your future is through there. But in my brain, I'm terrified. I have no idea what's on the other side of that wormhole. And it's not just my life I'm experimenting with. It's my father's. It's Reena's and Zayn's. It's Edan's. I stand there in our ship, which is now stopped, staring into the dark.
Is that what I think it is?
I whip around. Edan stands there in nothing but a pair of underwear. His thin arms and undefined chest are out in the open, for all to see. There are scars scattered across his body. But he doesn't seem ashamed of them.
Where are we?
He asks. There's a look of awe in his eyes as he walks forward for a better view. Still in the P sector, I say. And I'm actually glad he's here, that I'm not alone. He shakes his head, his eyes filled with wonder.
This is incredible. None of these have ever been found. People have wasted their whole lives trying to chase them down.
You know a lot more stuff than I'd expect you to, I say without looking at him.
Yeah, just because I look like a street rat doesn't mean I wasn't smart enough to make it on Lazia, he says, if I'd wanted to.
A little smile pulls on my lips. I can't wait to learn everything about Edan. But that wormhole is staring me down, and something calls inside my chest. Come. We're supposed to go through it, I say, my voice very quiet.
Then what are we waiting for?
Edan asks, not a trace of hesitation. I swallow once. I stand a little taller and I roll my shoulders back. Frank, take us through the wormhole, I give the command. There's one simple ping sound, an affirmation as he gives the ship the command.
and we slip forward. My heart jumps into my throat. My breath gets caught somewhere behind my tongue. But a hand slips into mine, bony but tough. Edan holds it tight, and I look up at him to see the wild, manic excitement on his face. He's mad, utterly mad. So I squeeze his hand a little tighter, as if I can steal some of that manic bravery from him. I hold my breath as the tip of our ship meets that dark center, and slowly, we slip inside the wormhole. Space is dark, but this is a darkness unlike anything I've ever experienced. Even the lights inside our ship grow dim. It's like a physical, thick thing that creeps inside and lays itself across every surface. I feel blind. I've been robbed of all sense of sight. The breath catches in my throat. Even the air feels thinner in here. My heart beats faster, on the verge of panic. But only seconds after it begins, it's over. I pull in a deep breath. The stars reappear. The darkness leaks back outside of the ship. And there, only 10 leagues away, I see a planet. I see blue and white and a calm, sandy coral color. I know that's water and there is some land, but mostly, it's a planet full of water. Edan lets go of my hand and goes to the hollow display. He taps it, pulling up a map. We're in the B sector, on the far, outreach side of the galaxy.
Whatever that planet is, it doesn't even read on the galactic maps,
Edan says. He sounds excited, ready for anything.
I don't know how that's even possible. There are automatic scanners that have been everywhere in the galaxy. They wouldn't miss that planet, not unless someone was hiding it.
I whip around to see Zayn walking across the command deck, a look of awe on his face. His hair is standing up everywhere, and he wears sleeping pants but nothing else.
You sure we're in the B sector?
He asks as he goes to the hollow display and inputs a few commands. The view on it zooms out, displaying our galaxy, and then zooms back in, showing that we are in fact in the B sector.
How the void did we get here?
Wormhole, Edan says, with that mischievous, wicked smile of his. The hollow display starts pinging that a message is coming through. Zayn clicks it, and it displays large, big enough for us all to read. Congratulations on your bravery. We are all waiting for you. You can land at these coordinates. A series of numbers displays. Frank, set our course for these coordinates, I say, before I can think about them too much.
Who the void is that message from, Nova?
Zayn demands, looking at me with wild eyes.
How did we even get here?
I look over at him warily, annoyed that he's jumping all over me. Another Nero contacted me, I say, and before I can continue, Zayn's expression shifts to horrified and scared.
Valen Nero? He exclaims. You took us straight to that psychopath?
I snap. It just happens sometimes. My hand leaps out and I strike Zayn across the face. He takes a step back, his expression shocked, but finally silent. I would never, I say, quiet and deadly. Maybe that's a lie, but I would never now. He looks at me with wide eyes, but he finally shuts up. Just then, my father and Reena step out onto the command deck as Edan makes an entertained, surprised noise, covering his smile with his hand. It was another Nero, I say. Looking around at them all, they watch me with uncertainty and fear. I feel like we can trust her.
I think she's with the Bahiri, and I think they're all there on that planet. They're all quiet for a moment. I wouldn't know what to say, so I don't blame them for not being able to find words. I'm asking them to trust me in a big way, which is scary after what we just went through. Well, what are we waiting for? Reena says. She stands in the doorway, her arms folded over her chest in her sleeping garments. We better get presentable for our new hosts. Nova, are you sure about this? My father's voice comes out low and quiet. He looks at me with his gray eyes that are nothing like mine, because we don't share a single bit of DNA. I don't know, I say honestly. But at this point, I don't know anything about anything, and we have to believe in something. We have to trust in something. So he nods, and it must be good enough for everyone else. 30 minutes later, we're all dressed and clean and ready. Our ship enters the atmosphere of this hidden planet, and the Frank guides us to the given coordinates. We watch out the port window, and my jaw is slightly slack. There's blue ocean, so much of it. And there, where we are headed, is a series of islands. They're built of light coral sandstone, nearly white in color, but with a slight pink hue. Greenery stretches along the tops of the islands, bursts of color here and there. There are mountains, but I also see valleys. There are endless beaches, most of them at the bottom of towering cliffs. The water is so blue, it's almost the color of Neron. It's the most beautiful place I've ever seen. Look, my father says, pointing up ahead. My eyes follow his line of sight, and the wonder in me doubles. There's a big white building on a rise, just before it breaks off to the beach. There are other smaller buildings around it, more pink than white. There's a beautiful garden at the center of it all, and I see every color possible growing in it. My heart goes into overdrive when the Frank announces we are touching down, and it's just outside the structures, in a field of pale yellow grass. Everyone grabs their weapons just in case. The Bahiri are supposed to be the galaxy's most peaceful residents, but anyone can lie about anything. The ship decompresses and beeps. The hatch begins to open. I've never smelled air like this, without a single trace of pollution. It's sweet and salty, and it smells like heaven. Cautiously, I walk down the ramp, shielding my eyes from the sun. Together, we exit the safety of our ship and walk through the long grass back toward those structures. It's quiet, but not in an eerie way, in a peaceful way. It's so calm. We round the buildings, and from that massive white building, I see two figures descending the steps. We meet in the middle of the garden. It's a woman, and I have no doubt she's the one I heard in my head. Her hair is long and a warm brown. Her body is lithe and strong. She wears a purple dress, soft and flexible. Her facial features are defined and serious, but observant. The man beside her has gray peppered hair and a full beard that is well trimmed. His eyes are observant, piercing, like he knows all the galaxy's secrets. He wears gray robes that hang around him, loose and undefined. They stop on the two bottom steps, making us look up at them. Everyone in my crew stands tight together, ready and prepared to fight if we have to. I am Zara Nero, the woman speaks, and it is immediate confirmation that she was the one who slipped into my head. Head Nero here, and this is Tomas, leader of the Bahiri. My chest swells with her words. My heart thunders in my chest. It's real. It's all real. We welcome you to Calypso, Nova Nero. This has been Neron Skies. Written by Keary Taylor. Narrated by Jamie Lamchick. Copyright 2018 by Keary Taylor. Production copyright by Keary Taylor.